I've settled into a comfortable routine. Work 8 hours for 5 days, then head to the bar on Fridays. I'd pick up a Saturday shift, but because my job was at a call center, I could still go in hungover from the night before. Shift or not, I always spent Fridays at the local bar. There were 4 local women I often picked up for dates. They weren't looking for a relationship, and they were all aware of the others. Keeping things casual didn't cause drama. One of them worked as the bartender. We had been spending nights together, less and less now. After a drink, she told me the reason. "I found a boyfriend," Jessie said, sliding over a fresh beer. "Call me if he's anything like the last one." She looked younger than she was, and acted like it. Some guys took advantage of her, causing most of the town to get involved chasing them off. Jessie was like our local cute mascot. I bet most people didn't want her seeing me on the odd occasion, but still, I was better than all the other guys she dated. The last one I ended up breaking up an entire row of his teeth. Somehow she recovered fast from all of the bad boyfriends. She wasn't the kind of girl to show the world how trauma affected her, and I admired and worried about her. "He's gonna come by soon. Stick around and see if he passes." I was gonna stay for a little while regardless. Soon, a guy walked in, brushing off the rain from his shoulders. He was tall and thin as a pole. His face brightened when he saw her. He rushed over to place a small object wrapped in a plastic bag on the bar. He quickly pulled out a small cactus in a plastic pot. "I just wanted to get you flowers, but they die so fast. This shouldn't. I printed out how to take care of it," he excitedly told Jessie. He looked in my direction, but didn't know who I was. He must have recently moved here. He looked like a wet noodle with the personality of a puppy. I could tell he wasn't the annoying type to go around calling women queens or that sort of shit. He was in love with her. Simple as that. I dug around in my pocket to pay for my tab. This guy passed the test with a cactus. When I was about to leave, he caught up with me to offer one of those small fold-up umbrellas since it had already started pouring out. Yeah, he was all right. I lived near to the bar. The cold, rainy weather always made my leg hurt, so I walked slower than normal on those sorts of nights. As I walked, I reflected on some thoughts. Jessie might have found a perfect match. I now lacked one person to fall back on. Soon, the others I had a casual relationship with would follow in her footsteps. I didn't get paid enough to move. There wasn't a single woman in town who would ever want to marry me. My life had officially stagnated. Work, home, bar. Repeat till dead. This sucks, I muttered to myself. I'd stopped in front of a bus shelter to rest against. My leg throbbing in the terrible weather. I heard a noise that caused me to glance inside the shelter. Under the dim light was a girl I didn't recognize. She heard me speak and looked up. When we made eye contact, she looked away. She didn't sit on the bench, and I didn't blame her. The ground was cleaner than those benches. I saw the scars on her inner arms before she tucked her knees into her chest. She looked away, silently praying I would leave. It was cold as hell, and she was only wearing a baggy t-shirt and shorts. I spotted bruises on her pale skin. This was none of my business. I just needed to go home. "Do you have anyone to call?" I asked her as I got down to her level. She shook her head but didn't respond. I was a strange guy talking to her after all. "Do you want me to get you a cab somewhere?" I put my hand in my pocket and then mentally swore because I left my phone at home. I didn't know anyone who lived nearby. My only other offer made me sound like a creep. "I forgot my phone. If you want, you can come over and call a cab. I'll stay outside the entire time and pay for wherever you need to go. Or I could rent a motel room for you if they have rooms. But honestly, the motel is nasty as hell." I saw a smile flicker on her face. She studied me with bright eyes and then nodded. "I'll go over to your place. I trust you," she said in a soft voice. "What's your name?" "Summer." She said that in a way that made me assume she was lying, but that was fine with me. I just needed something to call her. I'm Finn Farlow. I pulled out an ID for her to see. Since I was bringing her to my place, I wanted her to feel as safe as possible. I wasn't worried this was some sort of con. I had nothing to steal, and she couldn't hurt me unless she had a gun, which I highly doubted. I gave her the umbrella and showed her the way to where I lived. Sorry, it's not much. We walked across an RV park to the last lot, almost on the edge of the forest. Once you got used to it, living in an RV year-round wasn't too bad. I let her go inside, and I planned to leave her alone when she made the call. She told me it was fine to be inside with her. She shook in her wet clothing. Whatever I said and did now would just make me appear even more like a predator. Do you want to have a shower to warm up? I have hot water. You can borrow some of my dry clothes, even though it'll be too big on you, I said, expecting her to be defensive. Instead, she agreed. I showed her how the shower worked and how the door locked, and then got a change of clothing. I realized I didn't have any underwear for her. Thinking about her underwear situation made my skin feel gross. It was up to her to what she wanted to do about that. Here, I'll leave what cash I have near the door with my phone, I offered. I left her with a change of dry clothing in my hands. She took them but didn't move towards the shower. I really don't have anywhere to go. Can I stay here for just tonight? I'm exhausted and just need to rest. Aren't you worried I might try something? I asked, trying not to be threatening. I can take you, Summer replied with such confidence that I believed her at first. I laughed a little, and that made her smile. I hoped she hadn't trusted the wrong person in the past. Judging from her scars and without a roof over her head, I assumed that she didn't have the best people in her life. I offered her something to eat, but she declined. After her shower, I offered her my small bedroom. I could sleep on the cramped couch. I've done it before. Aside from the bathroom, my bedroom was the only space with a lock. She looked at my worn baseball bat by the bedroom door. You needed a weapon when you lived in a high crime area. I didn't trust myself with a gun, so I kept a few bats around. There were a few crime books around the room in case she was too stressed to sleep in a strange place. She thanked me as I closed the bedroom door. She looked so small in my old clothes. I hoped I never met the people who hurt her to get her to this point, because I would know how I'd be arrested for assault. It turns out, I'm very good at removing teeth. I expected to hear her lock the door, but she didn't. I wanted her to believe it was because she fully trusted me and not because she no longer cared what a stranger could do to her. The couch wasn't comfortable, but worth it. I woke up sore, regretting taking an extra shift. I knocked on the door, waiting for an answer. When none came, I opened it just enough to peek in. She was curled up under all the blankets, looking terrible. Was she dealing with withdrawals? I got close to touch her forehead, finding it ice cold. No, this was something else. It's bright, she whispered, not opening her eyes. I got to work closing the curtains and taking out all the blankets I owned. I'll stay home from work. What do you need? She tucked her head under the blanket. It's fine. I just need to sleep. Don't call in sick for me. I swear I'll be gone by tonight. I debated on ignoring her and staying. If I did, it would make me look too pushy. I wrote down my work phone number in case she needed anything. I didn't have a lot of cash, but I let her know where I was in case she needed something. Was she faking this for some money? Who cares? I'd rather be out of a bit of cash than not let an actually ill girl have a safe spot to rest. I waited for a call that never came. My shift went by without any issue. For once, I walked home with something important waiting for me. The sun set early because of the season, and by the time I get back, it was getting dark. The Summer had been up and about enough to make dinner. She sat at the table by the fold-out couch. She greeted me when I walked in. Her complexion appeared brighter, but not ready to let her go off on her own. You might need to reheat dinner. She sounded much better. I checked the pot and then pulled out 2 plates. Spaghetti and hot dogs? How did you know? I half joked. It was the only thing left to cook, she answered in a serious tone. Here I was, trying to take care of her, and yet I wasn't really doing the best at taking care of myself. I made up 2 plates even though she made a half-hearted attempt to refuse to eat. She took a few bites, not appearing to enjoy the discount sauce and cheap noodles. One more bite, I told her, when she started to push away her plate. She sighed, and to show off, she took 2 more bites. I couldn't remember the last time a person sat across from me while I ate. I put aside my nearly empty plate to start asking the important questions. Do you have anyone looking for you? She shook her head, unable to look at me. Not in the way you think. I left a bad situation. I know if the people I was living with catch up with me, it'll be bad for you. That answer implied not so great things. It left a bad taste in my mouth. Her hand went to her wrist to play with a cheap plastic bracelet with some animal beads. How old are you, 16? She looked slightly offended by my assumption. 19, she corrected. Well, that sucked. If she was any younger, we may have had more options for her to be taken away from whoever she was with. Was it a boyfriend or family? In a way, she sounded like she was in a gang, but we had nothing like that around here. I know a good police officer, I started, but she shook her head. Did they force you to do anything? You won't be arrested. Well, depending on what they forced her to do. Murder? Then maybe. Other dirty work? Then no. She was a victim either way, and I hated how she acted like getting help wasn't an option. I wasn't forced into sex work if that's what you're worried about. More like manual labor. I waited for her to keep going, but she didn't. I stood up to put away the leftovers and to give her some time. She kept playing with her bracelet mentally, debating on what she could tell me. Where's your family? She frowned and looked like she might cry for a moment. She collected herself long enough to speak. My parents were in no contact with their families. They died a year ago because someone thought he could drive home high. I felt the pain in her words. My chest hurt as much as my leg at that moment. I sat down, and she must have noticed the change in my demeanor. I know how much that can suck, I added, unable to say the right words in such a heavy moment. Yeah, it sucks a lot. I didn't have anyone else and fell back on whoever would have me. I think being on the street would have been better. Her last words sounded more like a thought to herself. What the hell did those people do to her? It was a relief to know she hadn't been assaulted, but what really happened? At first, the scars on her arms made me think she was addicted to anything she could inject. But the scars looked different. She had no signs of long-term drug usage like withdrawals. I considered she had gotten mixed up in some sort of underground medical testing. That didn't sound as crazy as it should. She had no family, so no one would look for her if she died. The scars on her arms appeared more medical than drug-related. If the people who ran that scam had money, she may fear making others into targets. I wanted more information, but it was clear that that's all I would be getting from her that night. Let's play a game for a while, I said, and she looked surprised by the offer. Back when I was much younger, I liked to play a version of Go Fish where you could lie. If someone asked you had a card and you did, you could lie and say no. But if you had the card a second time they asked you, you needed to give it up. If you asked for the same card the other person had just requested, and they didn't have it, you put 2 cards to the bottom of the deck. It was a simple change of rules adding to a boring game. I often won using these house rules. Since I played it this way hundreds of times on family trips, I never expected to get swept in the first 5 games. How are you so good at this? I asked after getting crushed yet again. I'm smart, that's all, I felt an odd pride from getting teased. I took my time to shuffle the cards. The noise of Summer playing with her bracelet distracted me for a moment. "Do you like animals?" I said, looking at the colorful beads. She paused, looking like she would refuse to answer. "Yeah, I wanted to be a vet, but I doubt that's an option now." "What are you talking about? People get scholarships all the time. You're smart enough to get accepted. You beat me 5 times in a row." "I don't think beating you is on the same level as getting a free ride to college." She shrugged, unable to hide a smile. I started dealing the cards, wondering if I would be easily beaten in the next game. She looked far more comfortable than when she had got here. In that moment, I felt like she was strong enough to move on from whatever had happened to her before. Whatever life gave her, she was a fighter. She may not have a lot of cards to work with now, but I decided I wanted to help her get some. Hey, I started planning to let her stay as long as she needed. A sudden sound came from the roof that made her jump. She fell to the floor, ready to hide under the table. I stood up to grab a bat to take care of what animal had landed on the top of the RV. It was rare, but I did have raccoons jump from the trees and onto the roof at night. Still early for them, though. When I got close to the door, Summer flew over, grabbing my arm to stop me. She was so strong I bruised right away. She noticed and loosened her grip but didn't free my arm. "Don't go outside. We'll be fine if we stay here," she said, voice shaken. Another sound came. This time it was as if someone was running across the roof. "What the hell?" I asked myself as I looked up, expecting to see an answer. A soft tapping made us look to the window we had just been sitting at. A face greeted us with a wide smile. A man I didn't know was looking at us from outside and somehow upside down. His teeth were so sharp it should have never been possible. "Found ya!" After he spoke those words, sounds exploded all around us. Rocks came flying through the windshield, shattering glass. The bedroom windows were also broken in. Bangs came from everywhere. Cackling laughter outside, echoing, making it hard to tell how many people were attacking the RV. I held on to Summer tight as I found my phone. I knew it was charged, and yet it refused to turn on. The man in the window joined in the laughter. To my horror, his eyes shone a deep red. I wasn't seeing things. He had fangs and glowing red eyes. Who knows how many more of these monsters were outside? He smashed the window with his forehead, the wound healing in seconds. For some reason, none of them reached inside, even with the windows broken. I grabbed a knife from the counter. Before he could act, I jabbed it deep into one of his glowing red eyes. He screamed, his face transforming into something monstrous. He fled into the darkness, knife and all. When I turned, I saw something that made my heart sink. Summer was at the door, reaching for the handle. I picked her up around the waist and locked us inside the cramped bathroom. I closed the shower to block the view from those monsters outside. She sank to the floor on the verge of tears. I got down with her, my leg hurting in that position. "Just let me outside. They'll leave you alone. I never should have dragged you into all this. I'm sorry, I'll make it right." I shook my head, refusing such an idea. "I'd rather die than leave you to those things," I told her. "You shouldn't say that about a monster like me." "You're not," I started, but stopped after my words were cut off by another loud bang. For a moment, the words settled down. "We're dealing with vampires, right? That's easy. Like you said, we can just stay inside until we can move in the morning." She shook her head again, not agreeing with my plan. She was scared and regret was tearing her apart. How did you know? And these vampires don't follow all the rules. I would know that." With a shaking finger, she pointed at her open mouth. A set of pointed fangs became clear, and a lot of answers came crashing down. She barely ate, didn't wake up until around sunset, pale skin, and only went inside the RV after I said she could last night. My bruised arms proved she had some unnatural strength. She snapped her mouth shut, waiting for me to toss her out from knowing her secret. You're not like those guys outside. I told you, I'd rather die than let those monsters in." "Why?" I let myself think about her question. Was it because I'm a man and that's what men do? Was it because she was cute? Or because I was trying to replace Annie? I don't think I need a reason, but if you want one, you remind me of my sister. For some reason, that caused tears to come to her eyes. She rubbed them away, ready to face whatever dangers were ahead. I wasn't even remotely aware of what was waiting for us or how powerless we were. All the sounds outside stopped. All the color drained from Summer's face as she reached out to grab hold of me. "Don't listen to whatever he says," she blurted out. I opened my mouth to reply. Suddenly, my brain was full of static. I couldn't see where I was, and I no longer even understood who I was. Everything disappeared aside from one simple request. "Come here." The voice that overtook my brain couldn't be resisted. I simply was no longer myself. I have no memory of leaving the small bathroom or leaving the RV. When the static disappeared, I stood outside in the cold night air, the source of the voice in front of me. I heard Summer scream. My body moved slowly to see her being held back by two of the vampire goons. I called out to her. My body was cold from fear of not being able to save her. A set of powerful hands came down on my shoulder, the fingers like vice grips. My head was painfully pulled back so a set of teeth could come down into my neck. I felt my awareness sink down into darkness. I didn't feel pain. I didn't feel anything. My entire body was being drained by some unseen force. There was no hint of light where I fell. The pain soon came because of that heavy emptiness cutting me to my very core. Then something started to pour in. Something dark and disgusting. When I noticed it, the oily sludge half filled my empty body. I pushed back on it with everything I had. I didn't know what it was. I only knew I didn't want it. If I let it take over, I would no longer be myself. I struggled, the sludge pushing back with so much weight I thought I was going to be crushed. It felt like an eternity before my empty half-body started to get filled with myself again. The darkness and who I was mixed into each other while I was powerless to stop it. My eyes opened to a star-filled sky. I gasped for air as if I had been drowning. My chest felt like an elephant was sitting on it. My neck stung, but for some reason my legs didn't hurt. The events of what happened came back to me. A vampire's face came into view looking down at me. His claws were out, ready to rip into my throat. This wasn't the one who had just taken a bite out of me, I knew that much. But at that moment, I could only think of a few things. Summer was in trouble, I had changed, and I was thirsty as fuck. My teeth sank into his neck, ripping it apart. He let out a strangled cry as he collapsed to the ground, and his body shriveled up within seconds. His blood helped with the thirst, but it wasn't enough. I doubted it would ever be enough. I spotted my next target. He moved in slow motion, unable to keep up with my feral state. I lost my mind for a few minutes. I guess I killed 4 of them before the voice that lured me outside spoke again. "Stop." My body froze against my will. Slowly, my mind returned. I breathed heavily, staring at the creature that I hated so much it hurt. He was tall, with long, slicked-back black hair. He wore all black, as if that made him look cool. He had an amused look on his face as he raised a hand to settle down his other minions. "I wasn't expecting you to come back the way you did." I pushed forward, snapping my teeth at him. I got a half a step before whatever power he held stopped my body again. Now, calm down. I am a reasonable man. Bullshit, I snapped at him. My mouth was forced shut so I would listen to what he had to say. I am Noir, your new master. Like I've said, I am reasonable. It appears you are a special kind of vampire, like our friend there. The wounds you leave are hard to heal, he explained, and paused to make a show of fixing his hair as if anyone cared. I wanted the little darling you sheltered to kill 2 vampires. Summer didn't have the stomach for such a thing and ran from us. Now I'll make you a deal. Take the job and both of you can be free. Again, bullshit, but I didn't have a choice. My body wasn't my own until I found a way to break free from his control. Noir let me speak, expecting a favorable answer. Let Summer go and we'll talk. No can do, sport. If I do that, you have nothing to work for. Little Summer will stay with us until you finish the job. But I assure you, we shall not cause any harm to that poor creature. There is no time limit, but the sooner the better. I forced through his control enough to see Summer shaking her head. Tears were in her eyes. She silently told me not to listen, but I didn't have any other options. I didn't trust this shitbag to keep his word. I needed to buy some time. If he said I was special, then maybe I had some sort of power to take him down. I wouldn't have been able to figure that out without him watching me, though. Fine, but if you go back on your word, I'll rip your throat out, I hissed. That was the plan either way, but he didn't need to know that. Noir smiled in a way he thought he had everything under control. A flash of pain came to my head, blocking out my vision for a few seconds. I saw 2 people, twins with pale skin. It was impossible to tell their gender. A location came to my mind when the pain faded. I hated he had so much control over my mind. Go on now, Noir said with a wave. Whatever held me back was released. I knew if I attacked him now, it would be useless. I shot him a disgusted expression, then looked at Summer. She shook her head again, begging me to get away somehow. I didn't know how I was going to save her, but I would, no matter what. With one last look at her, I did something I hadn't been able to in years. I ran. The small town I grew up in never looked brighter. I had changed in ways I didn't fully understand yet. I feared I would never fully discover what I was now. My body no longer felt like my own, and yet I pushed it forward for a girl I barely knew. My newly improved eyesight made it so I could see every corner of the dark streets. I heard people sleeping in their beds, the murmur of their heartbeats just background noise under the wind blowing past my ears. I knew it was cold, and yet my skin didn't register it. I didn't want to kill someone, let alone do what the asshole that attacked me wanted. But I felt like I would be able to tear apart a tank if I needed to. The church where my targets waited was over an hour away by car. I made it there on foot in under an hour. I'd run to the next town over, only slowing in the last few moments because my legs started to dully throb in pain. I stopped to catch my breath. Soon the pain faded away. Normally, my leg would stop me if I tried to even walk briskly anywhere. So far, I've discovered heightened senses I'd adjusted to immediately. The other vampires had claws, so I looked down at my hands expecting to see them. I felt a little disappointed to see my normal nails. It wasn't as if I focused hard enough that claws would appear. I did try mentally forcing my hands to become weapons, knowing I would need them in the upcoming fight. To my shock, my fingernails grew black and pointed. Maybe I could get claws if I focused hard enough. I'll admit, I tried to imagine a set of wings or transforming into a bat. No such luck. Looks like I didn't get as many abilities as I would have liked. I waited outside the church to debate on my next move. If these two were vampires, then it was all right to kill them, right? I thought back to Summer showing her fangs. She wasn't a bloodthirsty monster. There had to be good vampires out there. What are the chances these twins were like her? I walked up to a stop sign by the church. I tore it from the ground without much effort. If those two were good vampires, killing them would make me a monster. Which was fine because I wasn't exactly a good person before even getting bitten. I walked up to the stone steps, weapon in hand and my mind made up. I would become any kind of monster I needed to save Summer. The large wooden doors weren't locked. No force kept me outside without an invitation. This was a church after all. Everyone was welcome. The air felt stale. I didn't burst into flames or have any negative reactions from being inside a house of God with terrible intentions. My targets were in plain sight. They were in the middle of lighting a mass of candles at the far side of the room when I walked in. They froze, crystal blue eyes wide in fear. Another person sat in a pew nearby them. I focused on the figure to try and get information. Male, breathing steady. My senses told me he wasn't a threat. His heart rate was low, as if he was sleeping. I may need to deal with a witness, but I'll figure that out when it happened. I didn't let the twin vampires move first. Something snapped inside my chest. I threw the metal sign clear across the room, narrowly missing their heads. It embedded itself in the wood behind them, cracking the shelf where the candles were sitting. I heard a deep growling echoing through the church I wasn't aware that came from my own throat. On all fours, I crossed the room in half a second, fangs and claws out. I leapt into the air, aiming for the pair. For some reason, my jaws snapped against nothing. My stomach lurched as something caught the back of my shirt, sending my body painfully flying into the wooden pews. I cracked one in half from the impact. I thought I felt bones break, but I stood up just seconds after the impact without any issues. I was confused as hell. The twins weren't the ones who attacked. My eyes flew around the room looking for the threat the rest of my senses didn't register. The man who I assumed to be asleep stood calming with a gloved hand outwards. My mind swam, trying to figure out what he just did. Everything told me he was human, not dangerous. My body moved against my own will, wanting to tear open his throat. The dull thirst I felt since I changed overtook everything at that moment. A wooden pew came flying from the side to crash into me. I screamed in brief pain. I thought I saw a flash of light, but this man didn't move. Did the twins have some unseen powers? I couldn't back out now, so I doubled down. I recovered to skitter around on all fours again. With insane speed, I reached the man, my body twisting to deliver a bone-breaking uppercut. His foot came down on my shoulder, shattering it. I was now certain I healed broken bones within seconds. They still hurt like hell. I came down on him again. My punch stopped as he took one step back. His counterattack landed so fast I didn't see it. He hit the right side of my face so hard that a terrible cracking sound ripped through the church. Blood poured from my mouth from the impact. A second hit came half a second later. The impact on my left cheek rattled my brain so hard I saw stars. It would have been very nice if he stopped it at that. I found myself barely able to keep up with an utter beating. I was forced back, blinded by blood and pain. Even the blocked punch shattered bones that healed. The thirst grew so intense it almost overshadowed the pain. Finally, a kick to my stomach caused me to bounce downstairs that I hadn't seen before. During the beating, one of the twins opened a trap door to the floor. For some reason, I couldn't see in the darkness of the church basement. A single light sat in the middle of the room. I got up at the bottom of the stairs, ready to ambush anyone who came down. The ambush didn't go well. The man jumped down and I raised my arms to block his kick aimed at my face. That one kick hit harder than any other attack he brought down. I was out for a few seconds. long enough to kick me across the floor and into a circle with odd symbols written around it. The thirst overtook my mind. I thought of nothing else but using all my power to sink my teeth into his neck. I got up, letting out a screech that would have peeled paint. I felt my face turn into something else for a moment. The man didn't even flinch. He swiftly pulled out a pistol and fired. It landed on my shoulder. I had thought I knew what pain felt like. That was nothing compared to the fire coming from the bullet wound. How long had I been inside the church? 1 minute? 2? This man utterly tore me apart in less time than it took to microwave a Hot Pocket. I lay on my back, gasping for air. Warm blood pooled under my body. I prayed for death. Anything to stop this humiliation. My vision was unfocused. I sensed that man getting near, and then more pain came from my shoulder. The bastard was digging around in the wound. I mentally cursed him with every word I knew as I felt the bullet that somehow felt as heavy as the sun get ripped from my shoulder. For some reason, once it was removed, the pain became manageable. My body started to heal, and yet it still felt like it was shutting down. And to my horror, it was healing itself to death. I didn't have the energy to recover from my injuries, and yet I slowly kept healing. My eyes got heavy. I just wanted to sleep. I forced them open with thoughts of Summer. I couldn't give up on her. I witnessed a confusing sight. That man had taken out an empty syringe to draw a small amount of blood from his arm as if he'd done this 1,000 times before. The small scar on his inner arm made me realize what Summer's scars were. Those bastards had been draining blood from her for who knows how long. An even more confusing thing happened. He forced a knee down on my chest as he stuck the needle in my mouth. When the blood touched my tongue, my entire body jolted. A rush shot through my veins as if I had been injected with an overdose of caffeine. My heart raced and my mouth watered, wanting more of what I just tasted. As disgusting as it is to admit, the blood was the best thing I've ever had in my life. I needed a full minute to collect myself. My wounds healed without any traces. My hands shook from leftover energy even though he gave me just a small amount of blood. I wasn't able to stand, so I just sat on the ground, shaking, feeling confused as hell. Who the ever-living fuck is this guy? He appeared to be in his mid-40s. Each ear pierced with a simple black stud. His gray and brown hair was neatly trimmed and his face as cold as stone. He wore a black Victorian trench coat over a simple gray sweatshirt and jeans. Nothing about him appeared special. He had cheekbones that would make women swoon, but I thought he needed to eat more. "What?" I choked out in a shaking voice. "What did you just do?" Why heal me after beating my ass? And why was he protecting the twins? I glanced around to see them huddled next to each other. I had tried to kill them, but they didn't enjoy seeing the one-sided fight. Virgin blood gives supernatural creatures all sorts of benefits from a currently undiscovered reason. His heart rate didn't change even after I laughed at what he said. A virgin? At your age? I prodded, unable to help myself. Aside from my blood being useful for my line of work, I simply have never felt the desire for sex. Yeah, sure, whatever you want to tell yourself. I mean, how do you know if you've never had it? I was pushing my luck. It still didn't stop the shit-eating grin from my face. I should have expected to get forced back to the ground as he used his foot to crush my chest. I gasped for air. He let up on some of the pressure, but not enough for me to escape. Prove me wrong. Let's do it right here, he said with a voice colder than the stone walls around us. I sputtered, never expecting that response. I'm into girls, I shot back. I crawled at his leg with both hands. He didn't budge. How do you know you're not into guys? Have you ever tried being with one? Yeah, I should have seen my own words being thrown back into my face a mile away. I snapped my mouth shut, not wanting to dig a deeper hole. A slight hint of humor glimmered in his eye. It faded as fast as it appeared. He got down low, adding slightly more force to his foot. I reached out, aiming for his throat with claws. My nails hit his coat. Instead of fabric, the sharpened nails scratched something as hard as steel. I chipped a few, then got smart and pulled away. Are you religious? I played along, biting back smart remarks. No. Have you read the Bible? Do you fully understand it? Why was he asking me something like that after I said no to his first question? Even though you're religious and don't fully understand it, you still respect people devoted to their faith. I let his words roll around in my brain for a few seconds. Yeah, but... A crushing weight came down, breaking a few ribs. Lesson learned. I needed to keep my mouth shut. Hunter, that's enough. You've been too cruel. The twins came to my rescue. They ushered him away, the man appearing as calm as before. Noir had forced what they had looked like, their location, and their names into my mind. I couldn't tell them apart, but I knew one was named Uma and the other was Malice. They wore black robes of some sort. Even though they were vampires, they acted kinder than the only human in the room. I stood up, ready for Hunter to try and stop me. I took a risk and sharply turned to start running. My face slammed into an invisible wall. I was getting tired of all these unseen powers bullshit. What the hell? I shouted, holding my bruised face. Magic. Hunter spoke without a hint of humor. Cut the shit, I snapped. The twins took a step back into Hunter. I was trapped, and yet they were acting like a pair of rabbits ready to run. They calmed down when Hunter put a hand on their shoulders. For an asshole, he was a comforting figure for those two. So, you're clearly a new vampire, Hunter said, giving me another look. The twins' faces lit up. They acted as if someone just mentioned a niche interest of theirs. They got closer to my prison, blue eyes shining. We're always glad to show the new ones the right way. How old are you? Uma, I think, asked. I stopped to think, not aware of how much time had passed since I got bitten. I could take a guess, though. What time is it? The twins' reaction wasn't a comforting one. Even though I'd come in here ready to kill them, they both appeared remorseful for my current situation. We're sorry. It seems like you've been dragged into Noir, using you as a pawn. We had wished to resolve this peacefully, the other twin spoke. I met a girl. From the looks of things, they were using her as a blood bank for a few years until that nutcase turned her. I was bitten because I let her crash at my place. I don't regret meeting her, I just want to help her, I told them. I found it odd that a vampire wanted to go the peaceful route. I didn't get any kind of bad feelings from them. What could they have possibly done that pissed off Noir enough to try and kill them? You got lucky. Normally, bitten vampires go feral. It takes a while and a few victims before they regain their senses, but they're never the same person they were before. The kind of vampire you turned into is so rare, I doubted it happened, Hunter said, as he pulled a pack of cigarettes from his coat pocket. The smokes were stolen from him by the slightly shorter twin. I hadn't smoked in years, but the sight of them and the stress of the night made me want to start. Special? How so? I asked, having no idea why I was so different. Hunter appeared annoyed, as if he was dealing with a child. He humored me enough to give a hint. What are you doing that the twins aren't? I focused hard on them. I still didn't understand my new senses. We were both standing and looking at each other. I felt something from them, an odd force hidden away deep inside their bodies. I guess that was how much power they held. Even if Hunter didn't beat my ass, I didn't stand a chance against these two. I let out a frustrated sigh. The loud sound made everything click. "They're not breathing?" I asked, shocked over that observation. Hunter gave a sarcastic clap. I focused harder. Their hearts beat only once or twice a minute. From what I could tell, they only took in air to speak. Instead of the normal system, born vampires use magic to make their bodies function. Magic? Duh. Why do you think you're stuck in that circle? Uma silently scolded him for being so mean. I took a few steps, testing the trap I was still stuck inside. I accepted vampires being real so quickly, but I drew the line at magic. It explained how a human took down a vampire, even a new one, as easily as he did. It felt like he was cheating a little. Am I like that one guy from, those movies? Shoot, he had cool swords and sunglasses. Blade, right? He was turned into a half a vampire too, right? I asked, thinking back to the movies I watched years ago. The pair didn't seem to know what I was talking about. Hunter appeared offended by my suggestion. His face looked like he had just eaten something sour. Blade was a half vampire because his mother was bitten before she gave birth to him. Get it right. He spoke in a tense voice. Why are you so defensive about that? No, you're not a half vampire. You're called a living vampire. You can be out in sunlight, but it'll give you a sunburn that will take a month to heal. You can eat small amounts of food, and you don't need an invitation inside someone's home. If you don't get one, you'll become so unsettled you can't stay inside for long. A half vampire is when a vampire has a child with a different species. In theory, vampires can mix with a great deal of creatures. The birth rates have dropped in the recent generations, so lately there's only been one half human, half vampire. That was all a bit much. It was good to know, but I really did need to know about other vampires. I mean, come on. That's good and all, but I need to save my friend. I only came here because he said I could get Summer back if I killed those two. You all seem so strong, so why don't we work together to kick Noir's ass? Hunter shook his head and the twins frowned. They wanted to help, but only if they weren't using violence to solve their problems. I'm not as strong as you may think. I'm only human. We don't have powers and need to rely on magic items to fight on an equal term with monsters. With the right training, you could beat me in a fight. The twins are powerful. They're from a very important family and 16 generations removed from the 3 sons of Noth. If you knew about vampire lore, you would realize that's a big deal. But they're not fighters. I listened again, wondering how much of this information was actually important. So far, what I've found out is that with enough training, I could repay Hunter for how he greeted me, and I might even be able to take down the twins despite the power difference. But after spending a little time with them, I already found myself between a rock and a hard place. It would be easier if they were downright evil. Killing them felt on the same level as killing someone with my bare hands. Why does Noir want them dead? Is there a way around all of this? I had started to pace within the small circles written on the floor. Could I kill these two if it came down to it? I was ready to become a monster, but now I started to question if I had the stomach for all of this. We had hoped to be able to talk this out. It all comes down to messy politics, Uma said. As you know, there are 2 kinds of vampires. Born vampires and bitten vampires. The born vampires all belong to a handful of dwindling families. Due to the low birth rates, There may only be a born vampire every 100 years or so. And twins like us have only happened 5 times since vampires came into existence. Because of our pride, nearly all born vampires are... She stopped trying to think of the right word. Stuck up, Hunter finished. Uma sighed and agreed with him. The other twin started speaking. Born vampires consider bitten vampires as lesser. Noir has been trying to prove he's just as powerful as any other vampire, but the families won't give him respect. He started to take down as many born vampires as he can. So far, he's killed 2. He picked us because we do not like to kill others. Life and blood are valuable after all. He's also targeted us because we hold the means to summon our ancestor. Our family is directly connected to the younger son of Nov. If we die and lose that ability to summon him, it's as if he's died as well. That deals a great blow to our family's power. This felt like a stupid reason for Summer to get hurt. Who cares about Noir's pride? If he didn't care about what others thought about him, it would save him a lot of grief. After hearing what they had to say, I understood why the twins were so kind. Unlike other animals, they didn't need to kill what they drained the blood from. Keep it alive, and you have a replenishable food source. I doubted most vampires had the same outlook. Noir would gladly kill as many as he could get away with. There would be no way he and the twins could meet eye to eye. Why don't you summon this impressive ancestor to have them deal with the problem? We don't know how. Our father has a very sink or swim mindset. He only told us the means to summon the youngest is within ourselves. If we hadn't hired Hunter, we would have been dead by now. And why is that? We're a little too trusting. I could see that. I bet if Noir asked them to come out and talk, they would fall for it. Even if Hunter was only hired to help, he truly seemed to care about the pair. Who could blame them? They were nice. Totally. They needed to be protected at all costs. Suddenly, all the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. Alarm bells went off in my head as my body sensed something before my mind caught up. The rest noticed the threat as well. A shrill, ominous laugh echoed through the darkness. The twins stiffened, and then their bodies turned into a white ball of mist. Both flew off to hide somewhere, letting Hunter deal with the threat. He turned his back towards me, a gleaming silver sword suddenly in his hand. For a second, I was so distracted by where the hell he pulled that out from that I didn't notice the one walking closer to us. A beautiful woman stopped just on the edge of where light could reach her. She had a very dangerous air about her. Long fangs poked over the top of her lips when she smiled at us. Her red hair matched the dress she wore and her glowing red eyes. I guess she was another vampire Noir sent because he doubted I could finish the job. You all do talk so much. How boring. It was interesting to watch this baby get taken apart, but then you stopped to just go on and on about vampires. Who cares? Let's get to the fun part. First, let's kill you, Hunter, she said with a cruel voice. Do you know her? I asked. Nope, he answered, ready for an attack. I then realized Hunter wasn't his real name, just what he called himself because of his profession. She moved faster than my eyes could see. A blast of heat tossed me back. I was blinded by white light for a few seconds. I blinked, trying to recover and to see what happened. The circle I had been trapped in was destroyed. I could move about freely. I looked over just in time to see the vampire hit Hunter in the stomach so hard he went flying. The guy that took me down so fast had just been knocked out in 2 hits. His sword clattered to the ground near my hand. I dove to pick it up. The damn thing was heavy as hell. I could barely keep it at waist height. Hunter, get the hell up! I shouted at him. The jerk stayed down. My mind was racing, unable to think of what to do. Fear tore apart my stomach as my eyes darted around looking for flashes of red. My body reacted before my brain did again. I moved out of the way of an attack. Sharp claws cut the left side of my face. The weight of the sword caused my feet to keep going and I ended up on my ass. The cuts healed within seconds. I got back up, heart racing, trying to see where the next attack would come from. I heard living vampires can kill us without much effort. Something about their energy disrupts our healing abilities. The voice echoed through the room. I looked up to see her standing on the ceiling looking down with sharp teeth showing. If that was true, then I just needed to land one good hit on her. I doubted I could, though. She knew what she was doing and I didn't. I know what you're thinking, but I won't give you that chance. She dove down, her face transforming into something monstrous. It felt like time stopped. My mind swam with intentions. I thought through my next move, but decided to let instinct kick in. I dropped the sword and then swung my arm as hard as I could. I landed a punch directly on the side of her face that hit her so hard she went flying, but it also broke every bone in my fist. I growled in pain, pulling my hand back. It took a minute, but the bones started to heal. Once one snapped back into place, the pain was worse than breaking them. The vampire got on all fours and hissed. Her face dented from the blow. She started to heal, but I guessed it was slower than she liked. I didn't want to risk a hurt of myself again and turned to use the sword. She straightened up, face bruised as much as her pride. I didn't want to pull this out for the likes of you, she growled, and reached into the small pouch attached to a belt. She pulled out a vial that I assumed to be blood. The look she gave me sent chills down my spine. Did you know bitten vampires can get more powerful if they drink the blood of other supernatural creatures? Depending on how powerful the creature is, the vampire can gain their abilities for a short while. Vampires sure do like their villain speeches. Fine by me. It gave me time to get mentally prepared. She tossed back the liquid, with the blood taking effect immediately. Fur grew over her arms as her hand turned into sharp claws. Her legs transformed into what appeared to be a wolf. Her body grew denser and her eyes glowed yellow instead of red. She wasted no time charging in my direction. Her mouth was open and claws ready. If she landed one attack, I'd be dead. I inhaled and focused. My legs wanted to run. Thoughts of summer kept my feet in place. I followed her movements and let her claws sink down into my shoulder as I brought the sword up. She backed up, but I was faster. I neatly cut off her left arm, then nearly dropped the weapon because of the pain and its weight. She backed off screaming, her face twisted in hatred and anger. Again, my wounds started to close, but I felt dizzy. I didn't have enough strength to fully heal. Any more attacks and I was done for. You bitch! She shouted. I wanted to say the same thing to her. I grit my teeth while staying silent. She decided to no longer mess around. A few more vials came from her pouch, and I knew I was, for lack of a better term, fucked. She drank them all at once, some blood spilling down her face, but it didn't matter. The mixture of so much power contorted her body. Cracks and groans came from her bones, and her flesh shifted around, trying to accept the magic from so many different sources. Her body grew so massive I didn't understand how it fit inside the room. I suddenly thought we weren't really in the basement of the church. The twins must have used some sort of power to create a safe space for them that this monster broke into. When her body finally settled, it had become something I held little hope of defeating. The face turned into something almost rat-like with rows of teeth. Her body was long with small wings tucked against her back. A tail as sharp as a whip cracked behind her as she ran across the ceiling, the long claws digging into the stone, sending debris falling to the floor. I was too scared to move. Yesterday, I had worried about my life being in a rut, and now I was facing a monster made of nightmares. The twins must have known how outmatched I was. A pair of lights shot out across the room, distracting the monster's attention. Ribbons made of fog gracefully avoid attacks thrown their way. "Run!" came a whispered voice. I saw a wooden set of stairs that led into the ceiling I could have sworn weren't there before. The orange glow of safety came from an opening at the top of them. My mouth became dry at the thought of just running away. My heart skipped a beat when I heard a terrible wailing sound. The monster had caught one of the twins in her teeth. She bit down on the fog that transformed back into Uma, her stomach ripped open from the fangs. The other twins screamed, seeing their sibling get tossed to the ground, blood pouring from their wounds. Fear took over my body. I could only repeat a single word in my mind. Run. Just run and save Summer some other way. I struggled to take in air when a simple fact fully sank in. If I ran, the three of them would die. I didn't like Hunter, but I couldn't leave the twins to be devoured. "Hey, come choke on this!" I shouted, trying to get the monster's attention. And to my horror, it worked. She dropped, landing down hard on the floor. No logic was behind her glowing eyes. The vampire had turned feral when she transformed. She came barreling towards me, and I did what my body wanted to since the start of this fight. I ran. We met in the middle, her mouth open, ready to take me out in a single bite. I sidestepped the attack and swung the sword as hard as I could as if it was a baseball bat. It caught the side of her mouth, her legs unable to stop charging forwards with such short warning. The sword was heavy and it burned. My muscles strained so hard I thought I heard some snap. Whatever weapon I was using, it was clear I shouldn't be able to carry it. It rejected me. A burst of heat came from the hilt, burning away layers of flesh on my hands. I screamed in pain but pressed on. It took muscles ripping, flesh burning, and bones breaking under the weight of the sword to finally cut along the entire side of the monster. I collapsed the moment the blade tore through the last of the monster's flesh. She was dead before I reached the end, but I couldn't get myself to stop. The sword clattered to the ground, covered in blood and gore. I fell face first, body broken. The pain was overwhelming. I wanted to roll over and die. My hands smoked as fresh skin started to creep back over the exposed bone. I used what strength I had to lift my head enough to see Maois going over to Uma. At least one of them was still alive. I felt a hand on my shoulder. My eyes drifted shut after I saw Hunter next to me. "I believe you. We'll go and save your friend," he said just before I blacked out. I wasn't out for long. He force-fed me some more of his blood when I was on the verge of death. That kicked in my healing enough to wake up. He handed over a bag of blood that wasn't his. It tasted fine, but knowing what it was grossed me out. I could sit up, but it would take me longer to fully recover. It felt like I had been hit by a truck. "Are they?" I slowly asked, looking for the twins. To my relief, Uma was doing better than me. "Vampires have good healing abilities. I've heard that some of the older, more powerful ones can even live after getting their head cut off," Hunter told me. I set aside the empty blood bag, my stomach churning as I tried to keep it down. "I don't like how I just drank some blood someone donated for a better cause," I mentioned. "It wasn't donated. Born vampire families had a system to get their blood through. They trade some vampire blood for medical reasons, and they pay people for their blood to consume. They also make sure that for every bag they drink, another is used for transfusions." Well, that made me feel a little better because there was a system in place instead of vampires leeching off an already limited medical supply. I bet this only happened in certain areas with trusted organizations. I doubted doctors were aware of the whole vampire blood exchange thing. "What's the plan to save Summer?" I asked, still feeling sore as hell. "I'll call an organization who deals with this kind of stuff. They're swamped, so I doubt they'll send anyone to help for another week. It's nearly sunrise. You go home and get some rest. I'll meet you before sunset tomorrow. We'll take care of Noir together." I wasn't entirely on board with Hunter's plan. It was far too simple, but there wasn't anything else we could do. I didn't have the time to train. If Noir hadn't hurt Summer yet, he would have killed her the moment he found out I failed my task. If I didn't rest during the day, I would stand no chance of fighting tonight. Doesn't sound like much of a plan. You didn't have much of a plan when you came here, and look at where you are now. Alive and with someone on your side. Well, that was true. He walked over to the sword and picked it up. He cleaned it off and then noticed I was watching him. What's up with that? Is it cursed or something? Because it nearly killed me. It's made of pure silver. Supernatural creatures are weak against silver. It's a miracle you were even able to pick it up. Don't try it again. I'll let you use a silver dagger tonight. I thought I heard vampires didn't like silver, along with werewolves. What other creatures were out there? And how had they gone undercover for so long? My brain hurt too much to think too much about that. I wish we could just summon their super great-grandfather and be done with this, I grumbled. Hunter suddenly appeared serious. He had softened a little after I got my ass kicked the second time. Now he stiffened at the suggestion of wanting to get some help from an ancestor of the twins. You're new to all of this, so you don't understand what kind of monster Noph and his sons are. He's not like Dracula. The novel describes a weaker generation vampire. The original is impossible to comprehend. He has lived longer than our sun. He has the power to destroy universes with a flick of his fingertip, and has. The scariest thing about him is he feels love, and that makes him unpredictable. His sons are a slight step down. If I could remove the power to summon the younger son without harming the twins, I would. I've even considered killing them if they ever discovered the method of summoning to avoid even a chance of bringing that beast to this world. Again, my head was swimming. Some of the things Hunter was saying was impossible. How was a creature that I assumed looked human older than the entire human race? Older than the sun? Was this monster something else that slowly changed over time? Wait, are you implying a multiverse theory? It's not a theory. There are countless universes like our own, all dealing with different kinds of supernatural creatures. Some of them use magic to travel between them, but don't worry about it, Hunter said, shrugging off a bomb he just dropped. What? I said, with as much emphasis as I could on each letter. Don't worry about it. He helped me to my feet to start half-dragging my body towards the stairs. Tell me where you live. I'll meet you tomorrow, and you go get some rest. He left no room to disagree. Within a few minutes, I'd given him my address, and we agreed on a time to meet. I felt too tired to do anything but start to head home. My jogging pace was faster than most people's running speed. It took double the time to get back than it did arriving at the church. The sun was rising by the time I came up to my RV. The bright light stung my eyes and already burned my exposed skin. The shattered glass was still littered inside my small home. I wanted to pass out, but I did a quick clean of my bed. I taped up some cardboard to block out the light. Then my body gave out. Before I drifted off, I set an alarm so I'd wake up before sunset. Writing down what had happened helped put my thoughts in order. I silently prayed Summer was all right. I didn't care if I lived or died tonight, as long as she was safe in the end. I woke up a few hours before sunset. I lazed around for a bit, not ready to get out of bed or off my phone. Then someone started knocking at the RV door, refusing to leave. I still felt like I'd been run over several times by a truck. Crawling out of bed, I yelled at whoever was knocking to come in, assuming it was Hunter. Instead, I saw someone I hadn't seen in a few years. He wasn't a bad person, but he still brought back bad memories. "Sheriff, what do you need?" I asked, as I looked at the older man standing inside my glass-covered living space. He took note of the damage, hands on his hips. I should have known the noise from last night wouldn't go unnoticed, but never thought he would come in person. "Did something happen last night?" He sounded more like a disappointed father than mine ever did. I shrugged, not having a cover story for what happened. "You'll never believe me if I told you," I said, sounding as worn out as I felt. "Vampires?" Okay, maybe he would believe me if I told him. I froze, shocked at the word that came out of his mouth. Did everyone on the planet know more about vampires than I did? I didn't believe in them until about 3 months ago. Then this jackass comes rolling in and threatens our town along with a few around us. Somehow I got in contact with the big government agency that deals with this stuff, like those large X-File people. They said if he sticks to feeding on approved victims, he and his little pack can live free. Who would have thought monsters had rights? The sheriff said, clearly disgusted over the idea. If it was up to him, he would have killed any vampires invading his small town. I doubted a normal human who didn't have access to superhuman strength or silver swords could take down monsters. But his hands were tied, and he hated that. I met that jackass last night, I told him, and opened my mouth so we could see the sharp set of fangs poking out. He appeared shocked, and I saw his hand reach for his gun. Because the sun was still out, he held off shooting me, knowing I wasn't a full monster but didn't know how. They have a friend of mine hostage. I met someone who can help me take him down tonight. I don't know if we'll be able to pull it off, but I don't care if I die or not. I just need to save her. The older man studied me for a long time. I didn't know what was going through his head. I respected him. He always tried to do the right thing regardless of if he was a bit clumsy with how he did so. I hoped he didn't offer to help tonight. Aside from having access to guns, he didn't have any kind of power to fight against real monsters. I was told to call that agency if the vampires started to target outside of the approved victims. They can eat people with no family to miss them, the homeless, or criminals. I fully disagree with anyone getting fed to monsters. I couldn't save those people, but I can try and save you. You count as these creatures hurting someone they shouldn't. I know that agency is backed up, but they might come in 2 or 3 days because of what happened to you. What he said felt weird. I lived in an RV. I did hold down a job, but I had no close relationships. I'd barely spoken to my family in years, and I had no hopes of a future. I was exactly the kind of person who those vampires should eat instead of someone with more potential. Don't bother. It's not a big deal. I'm like this now. The guy I met is going to call the same agency, but they won't show up on time. Then wait until they do. It don't make sense for you to go rushing into a fight. He sounded exactly like a stern father telling a child not to do anything stupid. I can't wait. They'll kill her and come for me anyway. Besides, I can hold my own. I've taken a few jerks down before, even with my bum leg. They made the mistake of taking it easy on you. Listen, if you're doing this because of what happened to Rudy and your sister... He started, but I cut him off. This has nothing to do with that, I said sternly. We locked into a standoff. He wanted to say I was only doing this because I couldn't help 2 people I cared about years ago. The past wasn't related to what was going on now. Summer was kidnapped by vampires who would kill her if I didn't do something, simple as that. All right, just be careful. There's nothing wrong with running away and regrouping. I'm sure your friend doesn't want you to get hurt trying to save her. I agreed with him on that last point. I was tired of running. It felt like I'd been doing that for far too long. A voice called us from outside. The sheriff was ready to shoot, but I told him it was just Hunter. We both walked outside to meet him. "He knows what's going on," I told Hunter. The other man took something from his pocket and tossed it at the sheriff to catch. It looked like a coin of some sort. The older man looked confused over the exchange. "Some vampires have mind control powers. If he was under some sort of spell, he would have flinched suddenly coming into contact with Silver," Hunter explained. I didn't even consider the idea of the sheriff working for the other side. He gave back the coin, and Hunter gave him a silver dagger just in case Noir decided to visit him for whatever reason. I doubted the vampire really cared about what a human was up to, but it did make me feel better that he was a bit more protected. "I'll still make the call and tell them to send someone out here ASAP. These vampires aren't your problem," the sheriff told us. "They're not his problem, but they are mine. I get paid for this sort of stuff." "Then you're crazy." My older friend said the words I thought for a while. "I am not. My mother had me tested." We all stood in stunned silence at the response. "Was that a Big Bang Theory reference?" I asked slowly. "I don't know what that is," Hunter replied, as if we were the crazy ones. Did this guy only watch vampire movies? We decided to drop it. The sheriff left, promising to support us the best way he could. He offered to drop off some weapons, but Hunter told him guns wouldn't work against anything but a weaker new vampire. A phantom pain of where I had been shot flared up. It had healed without a scar, but I still felt bitter about it. Hunter and I spent until sunset getting ready. He gave me some tips on how to fight and offered to let me drink some of his blood to get stronger. Apparently taking it directly from the source gave some sort of boost compared to just drinking from a bag he'd brought over. I couldn't do it. My fangs retracted at the thought of biting down on his neck. It may be a mixture of not being into guys or the memory of him kicking my ass that made my body react the way it did, or just being grossed out at blood in general. I did risk going feral if I took in too much power I wasn't ready to control, so overall I didn't think the risk was worth it. He accused me of making excuses. I didn't care what he had to say, I wasn't going to neck him. We didn't need to wait long until after the sunset for Noir and his goons to show up. The sheriff had lied about a gas leak to empty the RV park to ensure no one else got caught up in our fight. Noir stopped a good distance away in case I had any smart ideas. Red glowing eyes stared from the darkness of the nearby forest. He brought a lot of backup. Some of them didn't even look like vampires because of what blood they had drank recently. I hated how hard my heartbeat gave away and how stressed I felt. "I did what you asked. Now show me if Summer is all right," I demanded in a slightly shaken voice. Noir looked at my feet to the still bodies of the twins he wanted dead. He raised a hand so one of his minions could drag Summer into sight. I wanted to run to her, but I stayed still. My entire body was tense. Another vampire walked forward to retrieve the bodies. Just before it reached them, Noir spoke up. "Did you really think I would fall for this?" he asked in a low voice. One of the bodies shot to their feet, the spell Hunter had on himself breaking. He cut the vampire in front of him in half with one quick motion of his sword. He got ready to continue his attack when my body moved on its own. And to my horror, Noir got inside my head. I could do nothing but watch as I attacked Hunter. I twisted his arm back, making him drop the sword. I then grabbed it to throw it as hard as I could off into the forest. He recovered and shoved a silver coin hard onto my forehead, breaking off Noir's control. He gave me a disappointed look, but didn't say anything about my weakness that caused us to lose an important weapon. "You may not have brought me the twins I wanted, but you did deliver the hunter that has been a thorn in my side. One of my dear girls went after you last night and didn't return. I didn't think you could have won against her, but I doubt you can handle the rest of my newly formed clan." Noir opened his arms dramatically, making him look like a massive tool. All the vampires around us hissed or growled, trying to strike fear into our hearts. I hated to admit it, but this looked bad. I only won against the monster the night before because of the sword I now didn't have. I held a silver dagger that was much easier to handle, but I doubted we could win in a fight with so many creatures when Hunter was knocked out in one hit from that female vampire. Noir gave the silent signal for his vampires to attack. One jumped down from the RV, eyes glowing and face distorted. He landed on me as I stabbed the dagger deep into his chest. Before I went down, I saw one of those larger creatures leaping towards Hunter. I tossed off the limp body just in time to see the monster's mouth inches away from his face. I thought he was dead at that moment. He moved almost too fast for me to see. His fist contacted the monster's face. An explosion of white light nearly blinded my eyes. The jaw was blown apart, and pieces of bone and blood flew outwards. The beast collapsed as Hunter started to jog on the spot, hands raised in a boxer stance. A slight white glow came from his fingerless black gloves. I could hear his steady heartbeat. He was cool and calm, and that pissed me off. How did he take one of those things out so fast when he had trouble before? I realized he had pretended to get knocked out as a test. He tossed me to the other vampire to see if I was truly a victim or made up of some sort of sob story to lure out the twins. I could have died. It would take a lot for me to fully forgive him for that. Larger monsters came towards him. Human or not, he held his own. I helped by distracting the smaller ones. The dagger caused too much damage for them to heal quickly enough to recover before another blow. It was a good weapon, but I wouldn't be able to use it for much longer. The flesh on my hand already started to burn through a glove Hunter gave me. The weapon felt 100 times heavier than it should. I wasn't entirely human anymore. The silver didn't agree with me, and I was feeling the drawbacks of being around it. Within a few minutes, I noticed Hunter's breathing get harder. He wouldn't be able to fight forever. We made a dent in the small horde. Noir didn't appear upset over the casualties on his side. He could just make more. If we could just keep this up, then we may have a chance. Then the tide turned in the worst way. The vampires backed off as 3 more showed up dragging behind what I never wanted to see. They had the twins, the pair too scared to struggle. They were dropped at Noir's feet, both holding each other for support. Finally, things are going right for me. Soon no one will ever be able to doubt my power. Noir cackled and it made my blood run cold. Kidnapping them isn't anything impressive. I bet they came right out if you lied and said you were holding us hostage, Hunter said, his unimpressed tone mocking the powerful vampire in front of him. Noir stopped laughing and glared in his direction. The twins gave a small apology, showing that was exactly what happened. I liked those two, but they weren't the brightest bulbs. Noir reached down and grabbed Maoist by the throat. He lifted the smaller vampire off the ground and then ripped his claws deep in the flesh. I shouted at such a terrible sight. I moved to try and stop the attack, but more vampires got in my way. It felt like no matter how many times I brought down the dagger, I wasn't getting any closer. By the time I made a path, Noir had moved on to Uma. The screams of pain caused my body to stop in its tracks. To be extra cruel, he tossed both bloody bodies a few feet away from us. The twins' stomachs were nothing more but a mess of gore and their throats ripped out. My vision grew blurry. The smell of blood made my stomach churn and mouth fill with saliva. I didn't know if I was going to puke or if my new body wanted that blood. The world was spinning. It didn't feel like I was standing on steady ground. My hands shook so much that I nearly dropped the dagger. My breathing grew rapid. I couldn't handle this. I was going to fail to save anyone. I didn't want to see more death, not again. I wasn't strong enough to do anything. My legs strained against staying still. I wanted nothing more than to run. A hand on my shoulder brought my mind back. You're spiraling. Somehow those words forced me to breathe. I tightened the grip on the dagger to try to steady myself. The twins weren't dead yet. Didn't hunters say vampires were good at healing? If we got them help fast enough, then maybe they could be saved. We weren't done just yet. Noir may have been reading my mind. He snapped his fingers to summon something from the forest. A creature larger than my RV slid out from between the trees. The mixture of a lizard and a bat. It stomped its feet, the glowing eyes seeing a meal. I counted 7 more weaker vampires, including the one holding a terrified Summer. I got the big one, you get the rest, Hunter said, turning to face the new threat. Seems fair, I agreed, feeling as ready to fight as I ever would be. We split off, him clashing around away with the beast. I tore through the other human-formed monsters. After 4, the dagger became too much for me to use. I dropped it, letting myself go semi-feral. I clawed at eyes and ripped at throats with fangs. I let them injure me if that meant I got close enough to snap my teeth down on their flesh. The pain didn't matter anymore. I would heal fast enough. The only thing that mattered was defeating the ones in my way. A blast of heat and light came right after I finished off the last minion. To my horror, I saw Hunter get blown back. Whatever he did took off the head of the monster he had been fighting, but it hurt him almost as much. His chest was badly burned and he was smoking. His hands were as burned as his chest, and his gloves were missing. He stood long enough to collapse near the twins. His last action was reaching out to try to take hold of one of their hands. The only ones left standing were Noir, Summer, and me. He had roughly taken hold of her after the last vampire tried to kill me. I was out of energy. My wounds weren't healing as fast anymore, and my entire body throbbed with pain. My legs shook, ready to give out at any second. I gasped for air, trying to recover. Noir twisted Summer's arm behind her back when she tried to take a step in my direction. Get your fucking hands off of her, I growled, my chest full of hatred towards that man. Noir's expression turned into a confused one. He glanced down at Summer and his mouth grew into an amused smile. Soon he started laughing in a way that made me want to rip out his throat even more. Summer looked like she was about to cry, but not because of the pain of her arm getting twisted back. Huh? You think Summer is a girl? Is that why you're playing a white knight? Summer tightened her lips, eyes toward the ground and tears threatened to spill out. Damn straight I know she's a girl, I said, my voice as certain as I felt. A silent, grateful expression came over her face. She blinked away tears and did something none of us expected. In a flash, her smaller body turned and climbed over Noir so her teeth could reach his neck. She used fangs to tear out flesh before he gave her an order to stop. Noir saw Summer as weak. He never gave her an order not to attack him because he never saw her as a threat. He had enough time to react, but didn't because his brain didn't believe what was happening. Summer knew she was weaker and waited until she was close to him. This entire time, she played the damsel in distress, waiting for the right moment. That didn't come without risks. I screamed when I saw Noir force his hand through her stomach. Even with his throat ripped out, he was able to fight back. He withdrew his arm and grabbed a hold of the back of her shirt. She was tossed aside, my body finally moving. I caught her. She gasped in my arms, eyes barely open and face covered in blood. Noir blindly shot out what I assumed to be magic trying to kill us. A blast was going towards where the twins and Hunter were. I knew if it hit them, they would die. I raced over and blocked the attack with my back, the power making me drop poor Summer to the ground. I could only place my body between all of them until Noir calmed down. He gasped and raged over his wounds. I didn't have the strength to do anything but sit up and watch his wounds slowly heal. As he held his torn open neck, he started to drink vial after vial of blood. When he ran out, he turned on one of the bodies of the fallen vampires. Within seconds, he drained the body dry. His wounds healed, but he was almost as low on energy as I was. I could feel how weak he was, but couldn't do a damn thing about it. I felt a hand take mine. Summer reached over, her face strained. She mouthed a single word, one I never wanted to think about again. Run. Her eyes closed. I took hold of her limp body, trying to find her weak heartbeat. It was there, but unless I did something soon, she was going to die. All of us were. My mind raced, trying to think of what to do next. Where did I drop the dagger? Could I find it in time? What about the sword? No, I couldn't leave them behind. If I moved, they died. If I didn't kill Noir, he would kill us. Could Summer drink some of my blood and recover? What if she drank some of Hunter's? Would he be able to live through that? You're spiraling. Recalling those words did nothing to help. The smell of blood was overwhelming. I couldn't focus. No matter what I thought of, I saw no way out. Noir could control me if I attacked him. I was powerless, utterly powerless to save anyone. My chest hurt so much over that realization that it felt like I was going to cave in. In that moment, I had nearly given up hope. I wasn't aware that right next to me, I had what could save us shining in the moonlight. The clouds parted and my eyes were attracted to a slight shine coming from Uma's stomach wound. My brain slowly adjusted to accept what I was seeing. I carefully reached out to take hold of a metal object that had been embedded in her organs. I winced, removing it while silently apologizing to her for the action. I was holding an ornate bar with a notch in the middle. Noir wasn't aware of my actions. He was too busy going into another villain speech I wasn't paying attention to. I felt sick reaching over to Maoist to dig around in his wound to find another bar that looked like the first one. When they had said being able to summon their ancestor was inside of them, I didn't think it would be literally inside of them. Noir finally saw what was in my hands. If the color could drain from his face, it would have. His mouth dropped open, fear clear on his face. He started in order, but I was faster. I pressed together the pieces of metal to make a cross. I didn't know what to expect, but I didn't have any other options. The world around me froze. I felt a pressure appear all around, and the air felt thicker than honey. A rumbling shook the ground as the sky turned a deep shade of red. Crashes of sound came from all around, each burst getting closer and closer. My chest tightened in a primal fear that overtook my body. Another sound came, and I was too scared to realize that it was that of my teeth chattering. Blue lightning came down, leaving a formless shape of white behind. My body almost couldn't handle being so close to such pure magic in the air. Slowly, the power pulled together into a vague outline of a person. White glowing bat wings stretched out into the sky. The wings slowly shrank down, tucking themselves tightly against the ancestor's back. He wore flowing white fabric that moved on its own. Long, pure white hair that touched the ground and covered half of his face, but I wasn't able to see what he looked like. For a moment, a bat-like face showed, and then it blurred. Countless faces shifted within seconds. My mind couldn't keep up or comprehend what this monster truly was. The younger son held so much power, he stopped the world around him and transformed it into something else entirely. I wasn't on the same level to see its true form, just the vaguely human-shaped one. If he was like this, then what was his father like? I couldn't even fathom it. I felt unseen eyes land on me. My body shut down for a second, my vision turned to gray and everything hurt, and yet I fought through it all to say a single word. Help. He would at the very least heal the twins. They were family after all. But what about the other two I cared about? I felt a wave of magic in my direction so heavy it made my lungs stop. When I recovered, I saw the twins were perfectly fine, but Summer and Hunter were still frozen in time, wounded. I opened my mouth to beg this force of nature to save them as well. To my sheer horror, the younger son was in front of me. He placed a single finger on my forehead. I started to fall into the ground, back to the past and to the worst day of my life. I was no longer facing a mind-bending, powerful monster. I was walking down the street, scrolling through my phone with my sister and my best friend Rudy next to me. I wasn't paying attention to what they were saying. I missed out on their last words because I was too focused on texting a girl I thought was cute at the time. I heard the car but didn't see it. I didn't realize we had been hit until I woke up in the middle of the road, blood covering the side of my face and my leg twisted. The pain didn't hit for a few seconds. My first thought was how I wouldn't be able to stay on any of my sports teams. My second thought was about my sister. I saw Rudy first, with his head turned at an impossible angle. I knew right away he was gone. When I saw my sister twitch, I didn't do anything. I couldn't bring myself to move. I sat as the pain overtook everything else. The sound came of the crashed car straining against the road barrier and finally dropping off the bridge. The driver had a heart attack. He had been having chest pains and decided he was well enough to drive himself to the hospital, and he was dead before the car hit us. I closed my eyes and opened them again, staring at my phone. I was trapped inside my body, playing out the motions of that day. I knew I just wasn't mentally there. This monster literally ripped me back to that moment in time. I knew it was coming, and yet I couldn't stop it. I strained to hear what my sister and Rudy were saying. I've always regretted not hearing his last words. I was in the hospital for Rudy's funeral. I could have attended, but deep down it felt like if I went to his service, then that was it. He was dead. His parents didn't force me. They didn't blame me for not going. Again, walking down the street, my two loved ones were next to me until the car hit us. I knew it was just useless, but I fought against my body trying to change the outcome. I should have traded places with my sister. Oh, why did I let her walk so close to the road? The wife of the man who caused the accident came to the hospital. She apologized for what happened, face full of grief. She lost someone she cared about in the same accident. And yet I did something I've always regretted. I snapped at her, saying she should be sorry because her husband killed Rudy and might as well kill my sister. She accepted my anger and left the room. I heard she died a few months later of breast cancer. Why was this monster making me relive all of this over again? I lost track of how many times the car hit us, how many times I saw Rudy's body, how many times I saw my sister bloody and alone on the road. I could have crawled over to her, but I didn't. I left her and just focused on my pain, even though I came away with the least amount of injuries. Again, I felt the car hit us. She's still alive. The accident caused brain damage, but she's now on the same level as a toddler. She won't even get to finish high school, go to college, get married, have kids. I saw her a handful of times after the accident. My parents can't retire because they use all their savings for her medical costs. But they love her. They love her so damn much, and I was nothing but a burden on them. I told my father to focus all their attention on her. I would send whatever money I could, but I wasn't ready to be her brother. So I ran. And I've been running for years. Again, I sit in the middle of the road, leg twisted, my best friend gone, and my sister alone. Something inside snapped. I started to scream until my lungs gave out. I vented all the pain, anger, and shame from my past actions. I've never hated myself more than in that moment. I should have been there for her. I should have listened to what they were saying. I should have been the brother she needed after the accident. Instead, all I've done is blame others and run from my mistake. I gasped deep, painful gulps of air. Tears stung my eyes. The pain in my leg faded, and I saw I wasn't in the middle of the road, but sitting in the grass near my RV. The younger son stood over Summer and Hunter, his clawed hands reaching down to take them. I choked on fear and then noticed a glint of the silver dagger in the grass. He was going to kill them. A force of nature I had no chance against was going to take away more people from my life. Slowly, I got to my feet again and I ran. My hand landed on the silver dagger. I picked it up, not breaking my pace. I ran towards that monster to put everything I had into plunging the blade deep into his back. I felt something snap and then I fell forward. I forced myself to sit back up, looking around to find the threat. He appeared sitting next to me, knees up to his chin with a stable human face. What a human reaction. His voice sounded like a soft breeze. It oddly calmed me, along with the smile that made him look almost like a child. I don't know why he put me through the mental trauma he just did, but if he wasn't a threat, I didn't care for the reason. Please, help these two. I'll give you anything, I asked. You think your life is worthless. You have nothing to offer me. I searched through my mind, trying to think of anything to give him in exchange for his help. He wouldn't want money or anything I owned. The cross that summoned him sat in the grass. We both looked at it and he shook his head. That has always belonged to me. I'll take it back in due time. Then what? I rubbed the blood off my face and then stopped. Was my blood worth anything? Suddenly, time around Hunter and Summer unfroze. They both started breathing. Summer was slowly dying again, causing my mind to go into a panic. Could I give Summer some of my blood? No, she would use up all her energy healing her wounds and die anyway. If there was a chance she would live, I needed to take it. I cut open my palm using my teeth, then forced her mouth open. For some reason, the younger son placed a finger in her palm. I saw some white light I now understood to be magic pass into her. After a minute, he spoke. That's enough. I pulled away, relieved to see Summer's wounds finally close. Her eyes didn't open, but I knew she was going to make it. Why did you help? I asked, knowing if he didn't give up some of his power, she would have healed herself to death. I only raised my finger. The amount of magic I gave up was so minuscule I don't even consider I used any. This person was so strong that Summer's entire life force wasn't even an observable amount to him. We did the same for Hunter, but he only needed 2 drops of blood and a brief touch to pass on the needed magic. They both needed some rest. I couldn't rely on help for the next problem. Once the world unfroze, I still needed to deal with Noir. I don't suppose you want to lift another finger for me? I pressed my luck. The younger son gave a smile that made him look like a little happy frog. He admired my courage for asking, but refused the request. His hand reached over to pick up the cross to signal he was leaving soon, and I would be on my own. Bitten vampires have control over other vampires they've turned. However, your heart is still beating, is it not? He hinted. My mouth dropped open a little. I've never considered that Noir didn't have full control over me because I wasn't fully a vampire. Had I really fought hard enough against his control? Or did I just accept it because I didn't know any better? Thank you, I said as I stood up, dagger in hand, ready for a fight. I did nothing. You were able to solve your problems on your own. You just needed a moment to clear your mind, the other vampire corrected. That may be the case, but I still wanted to thank him. Because of him, I stopped running. With the blink of an eye, the world turned back to normal. Noir was confused as hell. The ones he nearly killed were healed aside from myself. Slowly, he started to laugh at the outcome. "That's it. You summoned the younger son and nothing happened? What a failure you are." He kept talking, but I wasn't listening. I stared towards him, determined to finish what I needed to do. "Do us all a favor and put that dagger through your own heart," he ordered in a rage. My hand twitched as I felt the words hit me. "Screw him." I kept walking. Fear replaced the expression on his face. He shouted another order. My body wanted to stop, but I pressed on. He became frantic with his words, not understanding why they weren't working. When I reached him, I kicked the middle of his chest, causing him to fall hard on his back. I fell on him. My sheer rage over how much he hurt Summer took over. He knocked the dagger from my hand, but I switched to my fist instead. He tried to shield his face, but it became clear he had never been in a fight before. His wounds healed almost as fast as I could make them. He started to beg me to just leave, and he would never bother us again. I ignored his promises. My hand found the dagger and brought it down over and over again. My chest ached from the effort, and I stopped when my arms refused to move. Noir was reduced to nothing but a bloody mess in the grass. It was over too soon. I wanted to hurt him more. I needed to kill him again. Someone grabbed me from behind to lift me to my feet. My vision turned red as I tried to lash out at whoever dared touch me. Within seconds, I found myself wrapped inside a large jacket, unable to struggle free. When I calmed down, I realized Hunter had his arms around me, pinning mine under his coat. If he hadn't done so, I could have hurt the people I wanted to protect. When I kicked at his legs, he released me. I wasted no time to see if Summer was all right. She told me that Noir hadn't hurt her while he held her captive, which made me feel much better. The twins couldn't help themselves. They also got in on the hug, but on the verge of tears over how all of us made it out alive. Soon Hunter joined in, but I think he was trying to be funny. That's how the agents found us. 2 living vampires, 2 born vampires, and 1 hunter huddled in a group hug surrounded by bodies of dead vampires. I was so embarrassed I wanted to die. "Late as always," Hunter muttered, seeing backup had arrived. Soon the place was crawling with men wearing suits and a cleanup crew. By the morning, there wouldn't be much of a trace of what happened that night. We needed to be interviewed about what happened. Summer and the twins went first, leaving Hunter and me sitting on the curb by a local gas station. A blonde, younger agent offered to buy us a drink and snacks after a long night. When I saw him pull out a wallet with cute frogs printed over it, I wondered what kind of people this agency hired. We got our soda and waited until the others were done. At that time, I filled in Hunter about what happened with the younger son. I didn't leave out anything. He listened to how I needed to face the accident so many times and about how the younger son acted. He was wrong for that. He didn't do anything aside from mentally tormenting you, and then got you to thank him for it, Hunter said. Maybe I needed to face some facts, I replied defensively. You're new to all of this, so you wouldn't understand how frightening these monsters are. They twist words and wear a kind face to gain favor. You would have faced your problems when you were ready. There was no need for him to force you through all of that. I bit back a reply. It felt odd to have someone looking out for me after I pushed everyone away. Damn it, I think me and Hunter are friends. Was it wrong I let him take back that cross? No. We can't control those beasts. I bet the cross was just an illusion of control. Monsters with that much power do what they want whenever they want, because they're desperate for some entertainment. He spoke as if he knew from personal experience. I realized I didn't know much about Hunter. Not his real name, or if he really only watched bad vampire movies. I didn't tell him, but I hoped that I could learn just a little bit more in the future. After a very long mess of night, I was put up in a hotel until my RV was repaired. The corporation acted fast. Any traces were cleaned up and my life was arranged to deal with my new nocturnal schedule. I switched to the overnight shift at the call center. I was put in touch with who I could buy blood from, and I was told if I drank a lot of good blood, I could stay awake all day if needed. Summer quickly got a job at a nearby gas station. She also started night classes to become a vet. I knew she was smart and hardworking enough to accomplish her goals. I needed to do one last thing. I asked my parents if I could come over. We hadn't seen each other in 2 years. They looked far too old and frail to be taking care of my sister, and yet they weren't unhappy. I told them I wanted to be more involved in Annie's life. I understood if it was too late. I'd refused to see her all this time. We wanted you to be ready for this, and we understood if you would never be ready. If you think you are, then we'll be glad to be a family again. But you need to be certain. Annie needs a brother, not one that's going to be in and out of her life, my father told me. I hadn't cried in front of my parents since I was a child. Not even after the accident I left myself shed tears around them. I let myself cry then. I want to be her brother again. I expected Annie to hate me, or to not know who I was. I wasn't expecting her to act as if I never left her behind. I'll never think I deserve her love, but that wasn't going to stop me from being with her again. I loved her laugh. I loved how much she wanted to make others laugh with her. She was obsessed with fish and anything orange. She wasn't how I remembered her. A lot had changed, but that didn't mean she wasn't my sister. I was going to cherish every single moment I could get with her from now on. Because I wasn't fully human. I couldn't spend as many days awake as I would like. I often pushed myself too hard and didn't get enough sleep figuring blood would fix it. My plans were derailed when I found someone else in my RV. A hunter had a bad habit of showing up. He claimed he was just checking to make sure I hadn't turned into a feral monster. But I think he was lying and just used my place as a safe place to crash. The twins no longer needed him. Others heard that the younger son had been summoned, and everyone assumed they knew how. No one corrected the rumors, so now they were safe from anyone trying to mess with them. But now, I was stuck with a monster hunter taking naps with his shoes on in my bed. I learned the hard way not to try and drag him out. I nearly died the last time. He should at least not track so much dirt on my sheets. I made another mistake of trying to take his shoes off while he slept. Soon I was hauling him out of the RV as my broken jaw healed. I tossed him on the grass and then tried to rub away the dirty boot print from my face. "Just checking to see if you're still acting human," he lied. "Bullshit," I hissed. If this kept up, I was going to have to charge him an Airbnb fee. I expected him to leave, but he spotted something in the grass near the woods. I've learned in the past few months that he liked animals as much as Summer does. He turned into a different person around cats. Without a hint of shame, he baby-talked a stray cat out of the woods. He even got on his back so the flea-covered thing could sit on his chest and rub against his face. "Have you ever given your future any thought?" he asked with his normal voice, still petting the cat. That was a topic I wasn't ready for. I knew I was going to outlive my family. Living vampires don't die of old age. I was offered a job hunting monsters, but I refused. I didn't want to risk my life. I wanted to make up for lost time with my sister. "I'm fine with how things are. How about you?" "For now, I'm going to get this widow baby into a vet. Then I'll keep fighting monsters until something kills me. I hated how fast he could switch to the baby talk and then back to being completely serious. Haven't you ever considered something else? I was born into a hunter family, a real hunter family. They breed down special abilities, making us only useful for killing supernatural creatures. I've never even considered something like that. I didn't know how to feel about what he said. It wasn't my place to correct his family's ways if I knew nothing about it. You know, hunters from these sorts of families tend to have the fear of supernatural creatures removed from them. You can't fight something you fear. We devote everything to just killing these monsters. I think it backfires sometimes. If you're lacking hatred of something, then what do you fill that space with? I had no idea what he was talking about. I shrugged. He stood up, carefully holding his new cat in his arms. Love. I don't do this job because I hate monsters. I do it because I love the good ones. Killing the bad ones saves nice supernatural creatures just as much as humans. So, I don't really mind what I do. I gave him a very long, hard stare, trying to spot the lie. Are you messing with me right now? He smiled in a way that made me think I would never be able to figure him out. He left, cat in hand, and with a promise to come check back on me. I was tired from a full day out, but I stayed up a bit longer. I sat on the steps of my RV, soda in hand, watching the sunset. I didn't remember sunsets being this beautiful. I wondered if it was because of my new senses or because I had just never stopped to look at one before. I did need to think about the future, but for right now, I was happy just watching the days fade away into night. Hey everybody, Kevin here from Nightmares Nightly. If you made it this far, I want to thank you all for listening. Tell me what you thought about this story down below. It's another one written by 02321. A pretty cool author. He's got some really cool ideas. I liked this one. It was a lot longer than I thought it was. I thought this was going to be about an hour when I first picked it up. But then I hit the 2-hour mark, which is good. I don't mind long stories. I love doing them. And I know the audience loves them the most as well. And tell me what your preferred story length is down below. I feel like from what I've gathered from everybody, I think the best story length is right at that 90-minute, hour-and-a-half mark. But let me know what you thought, and tell me what you think about vampire stories. I tend to like them a lot myself, but they are hard to do correctly. This one was pretty good. It had some good fighting elements, and it had some humor in there as well. Although there were a few plot holes in here that I saw, but not too bad. Tell me what you thought about this, and tell me, I have the next story already written with the guy who's a vampire who hunts for the outfit and has a partner who is a skinwalker. I have that written already, the next one. I just have to record it. Let me know what you think about those stories down below too. What you like about them, what's your favorite thing about them, if you don't like them at all. And tell me what you'd like to see them also hunt next, so I can give me some ideas on the next one. And also, the best thing to help the channel grow is to give a like and a comment down below and share it with somebody. That helps the absolute most, because all those things go into YouTube's, little ranking algorithm to push the videos to new people. Right now, the channel had a bit of a growth 2 months ago, and then now it's like completely stagnated again. with almost all viewers being regular viewers and casual viewers. There's only 20% new viewers right now, and if I can get that number up, that'd be awesome. Like I said, I'd love to do this full time, especially by the end of the year is a goal. By the end of this year, I'd like to do it sooner, but the channel would have to double to do this full time. But anything that y'all can do to help, greatly appreciated. Become a member or a patron if you can, and if you can't, just leave me a like and a comment. And as always, thanks for listening, everybody. Our leaders are serving a malevolent entity in a desperate attempt to guarantee the survival of our species. They have been secretly paying tithe to it, with the blood of our youth and the blood of our warriors. This sadistic ritual has been occurring since the late 40s. The First Major World War caught the Dark God's attention. The Second World War left him wanting more. Through the veil of reality, the thing could somehow feast on our suffering. There was so much suffering during those times that he could taste it from his forsaken corner of reality. He grew gluttonous and spoiled. Man's inhumanity to man excited him to a level he had never felt before. But when the bombs fell and the war ended, he was cut off from the outpouring of pain from our dimension. At first, he started taking people from our world into his. But even this wasn't enough. It wasn't the same, butchering terrified animals. He wanted the excitement and heartbreak of war. He wanted to see our fighting spirit strong before we were crushed. He let us know all of this. He spoke to our world leaders at the time. He proclaimed the existence of a portal in France. This portal would be his gateway into our world. He would bring with him the war he wanted. It would scorch the land and boil our blood. But we could stop him. Well, more like we could slow him down. Postpone the inevitable by entering the portal ourselves to do battle with him in his own reality, his own hellscape. For over 70 years, the armies of the world dedicated troops to enter the portal and fight back the demons hell-bent on killing all of us. We kept the Dark Lord out, and he still got his blood shed. A couple hundred lives a year was a small price to pay next to annihilation. I will tell you about the day the rules changed, and how your life will change with it. Teleportation was called jaunting or jaunt. Some smartass lab tech was a fan of Stephen King, apparently. On the other side, we had established 3 defendable bases. The biggest was Vox, surrounding the portal exit on the Hell End. Also, the only way the walking nightmares could get back to Earth. Further out was Thermopylae, Thermo for short, about 5 miles out from Vox with impenetrable defenses. No enemy had breached its position in 30 years. Last and farthest out was Alamo. This outpost was lightly manned, operating as an early warning for the other 2 bases. If overrun, the occupants could use a teleport to retreat back to Thermo or Vox. The teleport at Alamo wouldn't go directly to Earth. You had to slingshot back to the larger Vox base and use Vox's power to jaunt back to Earth. The layout of the surface was simple, mockingly so. Great clouds of acidic gas surrounded Vox base, marking the perimeters we were supposed to stay in. You could only go forward 20 miles before the ground turned to sludge. The gas was clear enough to create a strip of land to easily defend, and the gas never shifted or moved. It only hung thick and ghostly in the air, ready to melt anything that ventures into its domain. We've all been issued gas masks regardless of the behavior of the fog. In 69 years, the enemy never flanked us from the sides by using the gas as cover. The enemy always performed frontal assaults, running down the 20-mile alleyway of gunfire and artillery towards our portal leading home. So now you're caught up on the situation. Any other question, I'm sure I answer further down. My men and I had already jaunted to Vox base from Earth, and were now waiting for the technicians to start the portal back up to slingshot us to Alamo on the front lines. Captain, our jaunt is -30. Intel advises danger close from friendly artillery as soon as we enter back into real space. My second lieutenant yelled to me over the whine of the portal starting up. Why is artillery dropping so close to the LZ? I yelled in reply. Because the position has been overrun. The closest German units have fallen back to a secondary defensive position, refusing to go in unless we secure the site first, he yelled. From behind the 25 of us soldiers packed tightly into the small circular tunnel. If we retake the trenches, German command will call off bombardment. Best they can do is a 5-minute ceasefire while we were retaking the bunker from the hostiles. Damn Germans! They got all of us into this mess with their 2 world wars stirring up the old one. Now they retreat and make us do the dying in the trenches. But it wasn't anything me and Charon team couldn't handle. We were experts at clearing tunnels. The static electricity feeling rippled all over my body, making my hair stand on end. It was the portal activating. It was a feeling I'd experienced countless times. Attention! Immediately close your eyes and hold your breath. The jaunt will commence in 5 seconds. A pre-recorded voice said over the intercom. I did as commanded, and within 5 seconds a flash of light occurred so bright it was still brilliant through my closed eyes. It was accompanied by heat, like a microwave radiating all over my body. I knew the protective gel we were all sprayed in with did its job and took the blunt of most of the heat. But my exposed skin would always be sunburnt bright red, no matter how many times I did the jaunt. I opened my eyes, protected by UV goggles, and turned to check on my team. They all seemed good to go, with the gel now steaming off of their bodies and gear. You know the drill, gentlemen. Weapons hot. Clear your sectors and call them out. With that, I pulled the lever to open the hatch at the end of the metal tub we were all packed in. It opened upwards and I racked my shotgun. I pivoted right, like we had planned, taking the furthest right of the 3 tunnels that appeared in front of us. 6 men followed me, 7 went up the middle, and 7 went down the left. 4 stayed behind to defend the portal. I hurried through the underground tunnel, boards underneath my feet creaking and dirt falling from the ceiling above me. I could only see every couple of yards ahead due to the weak halogen lamps hung intermittently down the corridors. No dead bodies yet, Captain! What the hell? Said Private Boeing behind me. He was echoing my thoughts exactly, but I couldn't show the team I was just as worried as them. All bunkers were mandated to be constructed the same by any developed military units on this side of the gap. It made them easier to clear and provided support to foreign units when needed. Right now, all teams should be making way towards the main underground chamber or command post. None of the men on the other teams had made contact with the enemy yet either. The last reports from the KSK guys said they were being overrun. What was going on? My fire team was the first into the spacious command bunker. I signaled for my men to fan out and take cover where applicable. The other 2 fire teams, Bravo and Charlie, arrived shortly from separate passageways. No sign of the freaks, Lieutenant Dirge said as Bravo team filed in. I can't even smell them. I looked around the command posts. Nothing seemed amiss. Tables with maps and radios, coffee cups and ashtrays, crates and cots. The smell of cigarette smoke was still fresh in the air. The big room was getting crowded with all of us crammed inside, feeling just like the teleportation portal. We were in a kill box if any deadie came knocking. God forbid if one with a flamethrower found us. Lieutenant Dirge slung his M1 and pushed past his men to the tables to begin reading the scattered paperwork, putting his German classes Uncle Sam paid for to good use. I don't like any of this, I said loud enough for all my men to hear. Bravo, stay behind and get what you can from those documents. Keep an eye out for our Kraut friends, if any survived. I'll take Charlie with Alpha to check it out topside. I keyed up the mic on my lapel to speak with the 4 guarding the portal. Something's wrong up here. I don't know what kind of game the deadies are playing, but keep sharp. We may need to make a rapid retreat. I had left the newest members of my squad defending the portal. They were too inexperienced to be on the front yet. They were too acceptable to the pull of madness here in no man's land. I had to wade them into the deep slowly. I have seen too many of my men succumb to suicide or psychotic breaks, killing their own squad mates. The 4 men at the portal were also the only ones with modern weaponry. Protecting the portal was paramount. If the deadies broke through, the 4 had to defend the portal until the explosives were set. we would destroy the portal before any of these ungodly horrors breached onto our world. As for the weapons, the Deadies could somehow mimic and manufacture anything we left behind. They already upgraded their weapons from World War I era to World War II, and we didn't need them upgraded any further. The 4 men at the portal had the modern M4s, grenade launcher attachments, and even a heavy 50 caliber turret to defend the 3 passageways. It was cumbersome, so it was also rigged with a thermite explosive to melt it before the enemy could capture it. The last line of defense. You didn't want to be in the tunnel when that bad boy went off, unless you hated your sense of hearing. I was leading Alpha up to the tunnel to the surface. Leading from the front was not common for captains, but it emboldened my men, and I had my own secret reason for doing it. I could see the dark sky from the opening to the surface at the end of the tunnel. I could feel the bitter cold. As we made it to the surface, my men did as trained and spread out. Makeshift bunkers, sandbags, machine guns, mortar emplacements decorated the area, but no eyes on any German soldiers. The surface was as dour and awful as it always was. Flat plains scarred with deep craters from constant artillery bombardment stretched on past the razor wire perimeter, before turning into a sludge like mud. The mud ocean going on forever, the sky was always dark and the air was always cold, thick with the kind of chill that sunk into your bones and sapped your strength. It was always night here, with no stars or celestial bodies to light up the sky. Only the constant flashes of lightning strobing in the distance. Our flanks obscured by thick, unmoving fog. Nothing much to look at on the ground. But we all knew not to look towards the sky for too long, because sometimes the lightning illuminated a dark form stretching upwards from the horizon line. It was something massive, spiraling endlessly into the sky, its size unfathomable, gently swaying, like the tentacle of a gargantuan horror trying to strangle the world we stood upon. Looking at it gave intense stabs of pain behind the eyes, and left them itching with the desperate urge to scratch them out. We all knew the thing as the Dark God, the Old One, the asshole and the reason we had to come here. We all knew this was his realm, and he invited us in, all the while despising our presence. So it was best to keep your eyes low and your mind focused on the task at hand. But you could only ignore the strangeness of this place for so long. The dread had a way of creeping in regardless, just like the cold. No wind blew across this bizarre landscape. It was like a walk-in freezer, with the unnatural chill just hanging thick around you, weighing you down and sapping your strength. When the wind did pick up, it usually heralded an attack, bringing with it waves of malformed creatures charging the wire. You could hear voices in the wind if you listened close enough, which wasn't recommended. The voices whispered dark and taboo things in the voices of the men that had died on this damn battlefield. If soldiers listened too long to these ghostly voices, they would eventually crack. There were 3 main outcomes to listening too intently to the whispers on the wind: taking your own life, and panic attacks, or turning their weapons on fellow soldiers were the most common, and sometimes all 3 happened at the same time. You had to have a strong mind and mental fortitude to work out here, but that didn't mean we weren't issued a little help. All my men had taken common and antipsychotic meds before we jaunted through dimensions. Also, my guys were mostly mentally hardened veterans, having made it through multiple combat cycles with me. We weren't staying here anyways. We were only babysitting Outpost Alamo for the regular German army to come in and secure. All 20 of my men were topside, and I told them to spread out and fire off flares to illuminate the dark battlefield. "Notify command," I barked at my radio operator. "We have taken back the outpost with no resistance. Still no sign of the previous occupants. Most likely KIA. The corporal with the radio swallowed deeply. He was scared, but just the right amount of scared. The kind that keeps you alive and doesn't freeze you up. But I would have to keep an eye on him. If he started talking to himself or swaying slightly, I'd have to detain him or kill him before he could turn on us. The corporal himself would have been a strange sight to any regular soldiers not privy to the situation. He wore a standard Kevlar helmet and digital print BDUs. He also had cold weather gear and trenching tools and night vision goggles. But his weapon and ammo was decidedly non-common, being an M1 Garand with bayonet attachment. Atop the rifle, he had affixed an ACOG scope. I don't know if this broke the brass's rules about not bringing modern weaponry to the battlefield, but I had never noticed the deadies to worry about precision aiming. I would be sure to inquire about the corporal's break in uniformity when we were back across the gap. I stared out over the trenches and embattlements. The Germans had constructed multiple hardpoints, kill boxes overlapping fields of fire. There should have been around 50 of them embedded here, but now they were all AWOL. Not even any spent brass around the turrets. "Get the drone in the air and dig into defensive positions," I commanded on an open channel to all units. I watched my men do what they had been trained to do. They fortified the outpost and prepared to repel any signs of attack. Our job was to hold the outpost until HQ sent our relief. We were a quick response team, not meant for sitting out long engagements. We were just babysitting until the parents got home. "Captain, the drone has spotted something about half a click in no man's land," the soldier told me in my earpiece. No man's land. It was a moniker used for the flatland 100 meters past the wire, stretching out into the endless dark. We could dig and defend trenches in the dirt, but the stubborn rock turned to a mushy quicksand half a click out. The mud further out was impossible to move in, and it's also where the deadies came up from. The enemy rose up out of the mud like some unnatural spawn being birthed from the dark sludge. The deadies would amass out of range to launch their attack. A frontal assault is where the attacks always came from. That was one of the only certainties in this godforsaken place. "Pull the drone in close and begin zeroing in the artillery on its position," I said, as I tapped to activate the touchscreen on my wrist. I didn't know what we had yet, but it was certainly dangerous. Everything out here was. The screen on my wrist showed the visual feed from the drone buzzing around in no man's land. The bright shades of grays and white of FLRI vision glared back at me from the screen. I immediately saw what the anomaly was. It appeared to be bowling ball-sized rocks stacked on top of one another to form a crude pyramid, about 4 feet high. The circular rocks glowed brightly with an inner heat. They weren't rocks, they were something else. "Oh God! Oh Lord Jesus!" I heard my lieutenant speak across the open channel. I was about to chastise him on his lack of bearing when he interrupted me saying, "Enable audio! I want to hear what's going on out there!" Whatever soldier was operating the drone controls complied, and the static pop of audible feedback emitted from the screen on my wrist. I went to turn down the audio manually, but it was too late. The noise blared, echoing around the outpost from every soldier with a wrist mount. The undeniable cries of moaning and pleading came from the stack of rocks. Many voices all pleaded at once in a cacophony of suffering, like animals on the brink of death, wanting a finishing blow to end its life. Worst of it, I realized the voices were pleading in German. The pyramid was the stacked heads of the missing soldiers. My men around the camp that had been working had frozen in fear. Some crowded around the nearest soldier with a wrist mount. Others stared nervously out into the dark abyss, as if they could spot the pile of heads with their own eyes. "Turn that noise off! Eyes up, gentlemen, prepare to repel hostiles!" I shouted into my mic. The cold wind began sharply whipping through the trenches, as if activated when we stumbled across the pile of horrors. The whispers came also. Sharp, hissing whispers, speaking blasphemy and cruelty in a constant, unending fury. I watched the feed from the drone while everyone else followed my orders, disregarding the horrors unfolding in the dark. Now that I knew they were severed heads, I could make out their details better. I could make out their uniform short-length hair, the ghoulish dark around their eyes marking cooler spots, and their mouths opened in screams. How were they still so warm? How were they screaming? Where were the bodies? What the hell did this to them? I got the answer to my last question quickly. 2 long, spindly arms shot out of the muddy sludge in front of the severed heads. The arms were longer than any humans I'd ever seen, flat black like they had been burnt, long fingers writhing in the air like hypnotic vipers. The arms continued reaching skywards out of the muck, at least 4 feet high. The fingers suddenly became rigid, as if struck by a rigor mortis. The fingers thrust back into the ground, clawing deep to pull the rest of its body out. Bony shoulders and torso emerged. From what I could see, the thing had no head, just a neck and lower jaw. On the jaw protruded 2 wicked fangs stabbing upwards like the jaw of the long-dead saber-toothed tiger. The thing pulled itself out of the mud to stand tall, about 8 feet, blackened and skeletal, skinny and bipedal. Long, narrow swords and daggers crisscrossed through the thing's body like some strange voodoo doll. It reached its long hand out to pick up a screaming head from the top of the pile, cupping it with both hands to place it on top of its neck, similar to how someone would put on a motorcycle helmet. The head continued its awful screaming as it was jostled on top of the neck on top of the bestial lower jaw. The headless abomination must have realized it wouldn't fit, so it held the head out in front of itself. It put the fingers of one hand in the screaming head's mouth, gagging it. With a sickly and sudden jerk, the thing ripped the lower jaw off the head. Once again, the now jawless head was placed on top of the neck, and this time it stayed. The thing craned its neck to look up at the flying drone with its new head. It felt like the thing was staring into my soul through the monitor. The camera feed cut out, and I knew the creature was coming for me. "Contact left, 9 o'clock!" came the warning from one of my men over the radio. It was immediately followed by the thunderous repeating boom of an MG-42 mounted machine gun going full auto. "Multiple contacts across the wire," announced another soldier's voice, as a cacophony of small arms fire rippled down the line. I grabbed the binoculars and stood up to look over my sandbag emplacement to survey the situation. And turns out, I didn't need the binoculars because the enemy was already almost on top of us. Ghouls, zombies, deadies, whatever you choose to call them. Hundreds of them were sprinting right for us. Twisted versions of humans, with glowing red eyes and abnormally extended mouths, filled with rows of sharp teeth. Some wore digital camo, some wore German helmets from both world wars, and some were naked, genitals swaying back and forth as they threw themselves into the barrage of bullets. They were all misshapen and wrong in some way or another. Some had too many limbs, or too little, or both limbs on the same side. But all had gaping mouths of fangs. They were false human. They were homunculi. They were a mockery of human form. It's like an alien tried to create a human from memory. They must have been coming out of the mud as we were distracted by the stacked heads and headless creature. They had mustered just out of range for a sudden charge, an onslaught of flesh. It was a degree of planning I had never seen from them. "Lieutenant Dirge, get your men and your ass up here!" I yelled to my lieutenant, still trying to make sense out of the documents down in the bunker. Lieutenant Dirge and his men barreled out of the underground tunnel to see what horror awaited all of us. To their credit, they showed only a moment's hesitation before they took defensive position. Most of the deadies were mowed down about 50 meters from the wire. As the slain fell, others trampled over their bodies to be cut down only inches closer. Little by little, the endless wave of attackers got closer to the defensive perimeter. The mortar teams worked quickly, dropping one shell after another into overheating tubes. The explosions rocked the landscape with brilliant flashes of red mist and body parts. A sense of panic was rising in my battle-hardened soldiers, as the wall of flesh and teeth inched closer, slow and steady. The deadies were getting close enough to lob grenades into our midst before being shot down. I saw one of my machine gunners get flung sideways from a grenade that landed in front of the trench he was firing from. The shrapnel was at eye level and obliterated his head. His buddy had to pry his dead friend's death grip from the weapon so he could take over. Incoming enemy rounds began pelting the area around us. Some deadies had warped versions of MP4s and Thompson submachine guns. They fired with reckless abandon, hoping to suppress us enough to get just a little closer. My shotgun wasn't going to be very effective until the deadies crossed the razor wire, and they would cross it eventually. This was terrifyingly obvious, as the wave of undead died just 15 meters out. "Rear security, we may need a quick exit. Be on standby," I yelled into my mic, trying to be heard over the gunfire. No response came, even when I tried to hail them multiple times. This was bad. If this outpost fell, we needed to destroy the portal that leads back to Vox and back to Earth. How had the deadies gotten around us to get my guards guiding the exit? Now the dead were piling up just 4 meters from the defensive line. The deadies numbered in the hundreds, creating a wall of bodies. They were so close that I could smell their putrid stink carried by the whispering wind. A flurry of new explosions went off down the line. The claymore mines were tripped and blasted the stinking mob back, giving us some much-needed breathing room. But still they came, clamoring over the mutilated bodies that stood between them and the soft flesh of my men. I noticed something different now. They were walking instead of sprinting. More Dawn of the Dead instead of 28 days later. They pushed all the way up to the wire, many being shot and dropping the whole time. The fear was palpable now, and my men abandoned the front line trench and backed up to station themselves around me. The deadies still didn't cross the razor wire. They stopped short just to be added to the growing wall of downed enemies. The wall of dead was almost waist-high when I gave the order to cease fire. My men were reluctant to listen, so I had to smack the helmet of a nearby soldier with the butt of my shotgun. Finally, my men stopped firing into the mass of red-eyed monsters. The deadies stood shoulder to shoulder, glaring at us over the barrier of their own slain. The quiet was shocking to my senses. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest and heard it ringing in both my ears. I heard a soldier mumbling some sort of prayer while kissing the crucifix around his neck. A cold sweat on most of us, as we stared at the enemy just meters away. "Ears," I spoke quietly but sternly into my mic, trying to get my men to listen. I could have just talked aloud to the 20 soldiers clustered around me, but I didn't want the deadies to hear me. I never had to worry about being overheard before, but they were showing a freakish level of intelligence. "Leapfrog back down to the portal 5 men at a time. Prime the C4 to blow. I don't know why they stopped, but we will take advantage of their hospitality." I turned to look at Lieutenant Dirge. "Lieutenant, take 4 with you to start. Double time." I expected a "yes, sir," or just a flurry of movement as they followed my orders, but nobody moved. All I got was silence, as both sides just quietly stared at each other. I felt anger grow in my chest as I commanded again. "You better remove your head from your ass and get to it, Lieutenant." Still no movement from him as I scanned the faces of the terror-stricken men around me. "I ordered all of you to unfuck yourselves and have some bearing like you're a damn soldier." They still didn't move. Were they literally frozen with fear? What the hell was happening? The soldier I had pummeled earlier was still in front of me with his back turned. I would whack him again for good measure. I went to step forward and my legs didn't respond. My brain sent the signals and nothing happened. I just stood there, like my feet were stuck in invisible clamps. That's when I noticed the muffled noises coming from the soldiers. I turned my head back to Lieutenant Dirge, his eyes scanning frantically, muffled screams coming from his clenched jaw. They were all frozen. I looked back and forth. I saw the same expression of terror and muffled screams. The majority of us were frozen in the open with only a few taking cover at the time. "Soldier, all of you, snap out of it!" I screamed to the statue-like men around me. I could still move from the waist up, while the rest of them were completely immobilized. I even tried to pull on my own legs to move myself, but some sort of unnatural force held me fixed to a point. The deadies all lined up by the wire started moving again. This time they all worked in unison to clear a path between their stinking crowd of monsters. They pulled their dead aside with quiet and quick proficiency. The hundreds of them parted like the Red Sea, showing me a clear pathway leading far out into no man's land. That's when I saw it. The tall, blackened creature that wore the head of its victim. It strolled down the path made for him towards it, and it towered over the mob of deadies. As it got closer, the muffled screams of my men grew more frantic. 4 of the enemy threw themselves on the razor wire for the thing to gracefully walk on their backs and step over the line. I could see the head he wore belonged to a blond Caucasian man, with the 2 fangs giving him a pronounced underbite. It stopped 3 meters in front of me. The eyes of the dead German were glowing red now. It grabbed hold of a large black spike that pierced through its thin body and wrestled it free, unsheathing the weapon buried in its chest. It held the long onyx blade point out to me.
"Guten Tag, Captain,"
the creature said in a booming and clear voice. I wondered how a voice that loud could come from a head with severed vocal cords. It continued speaking to me. I stared in horror at the thing, not knowing what to do. I had my shotgun, but would I just be sentencing my men to death if I opened fire? This is the first time the enemy had made any sort of effort to communicate, and couldn't run if I needed to, because I still couldn't move from the waist down. The creature paused in its speech, as if waiting for me to reply. I blinked frantically and combed my mind. It spoke in German, of which I can't speak. The creature cocked its ghoulish head and nodded in understanding. It straightened and faced the soldier in front of me, the one I had hit earlier. It raised its thin black sword in preparation for a strike. The soldier stared at his would-be killer and let out a fetal, gagged scream, helpless to stop it. The thick blade whipped across in the blink of an eye. A swish of air and the gurgling sound of a scream being cut short. The soldier still stood there, eyes rolling in the back of his head, and blood running down his chest from his neck. Some evil force was holding the dead man up, or frozen, even though he was dead. The spindly creature grasped the man's head with both hands and lifted the head up with a wet suction sound. More blood cascaded down over the body. The creature removed the helmet and put its long fingers in the dead soldier's mouth. I knew what was coming next. I closed my eyes, but still heard the snapping sound of the jawbone being ripped off. I held my eyes tight. Maybe I should have shot the thing to save the private. Why didn't I? Am I going to die a coward?
"Do you understand me now, brother Captain?"
came the booming voice from the creature. I opened my eyes to see it only inches from me, red eyes staring into mine. Where it once wore the head of a white man, now his face was that of a brown Latino man. Private Castillo, I believe the poor kid's name was. The monster was speaking English now. He must have acquired it from the remains of Private Castillo. For some reason, this skeletal figure wanted to have a little chat with me. Yes, what do I call you?" I replied, watching Private Castillo's blood dripping down the creature's protruding jaw.
"Desecrator of flesh,"
the thing said back without a moment's consideration.
"A traveler in searing pain, the rancid poison of hope, feeder to the maggots, the raping of the hopeless, pain and pleasure."
Desecrator? I mumbled back. I felt the warm liquid of piss running down my leg.
"Yes, brother Captain, that name will do. It is enough for sentient meat like you to understand. But I may help you pronounce my real name with your screams of torture. Only the most exquisite cries of pain can truly be labeled to me."
I felt as if I was going to faint, and was only being held up by the unnatural magic around me. I had faced death before, but this was different. This thing sucked the soul out of me. I felt sorrow and terror like never before. "What do you want?" I whispered. The desecrator outstretched a palm to caress my face. I tried to pull back, but my upper half had completely frozen up by the cruel thing's magic. His bone-like hand was freezing cold, blistering my skin as it made contact. I started to scream, but was gagged as it stuck its thumb into my mouth, my tongue freezing to it painfully.
"What do I want with you? Something so insignificant like you. You are no son of Adam. You are not made in the likeness of the divine, like you tell yourself as you worship your non-existent God. There is nothing special or of purpose in any of you. You are only meat, a quivering mass meant to tear and scream for my master for his amusement. Your resistance only postpones the inevitable decay of your carnal vessel. But the loss of hope makes the meat taste so much sweeter.
He quickly removed his hand from my face, pulling off a layer of skin as he did. I coughed up blood and realized my neck and head could move again. Suddenly, the deadies sprung from stillness into action, barging over the razor wire to attack my men. I could hear their muffled screams of pain as the deadies tore into them. The evil magic held them steady as noses were bitten off, chunks of skin peeled away, and guts torn out onto the dirt. It was a feeding frenzy on the defenseless soldiers. This was hell. I was in hell. How long had I taken mine and my men's life for granted? How long had I been so comfortable with insulting the dark god? One by one, the screams died down, leaving only the wet chewing and guttural noises from the deadies to remain. They clustered around the bodies, eating them as they stood upright, stripping the dead soldiers to the bone. I had been with these soldiers for years. They trusted me to lead them into hell and out again. But their faith was misplaced. They all died a terrible death without even the honor of fighting back. I wept tears of sorrow while forced to stand before the desecrator. I ran through everything in my mind. Nothing made sense. In the 50 years we had been fighting off the invasion, nothing like this monster ever appeared. Since the portals appeared in our world, they had never made it through. We had sacrificed countless lives to keep the darkness at bay. We had grown too confident, too relaxed about fighting the enemy. "Why do you call me brother?" I asked weakly to the monster, as he waited patiently for me to pull myself together.
We both served the master. We both waged war for his amusement. The finite suffering of man is ecstasy to his infinite existence. The emotions displayed in the heat of battle are the most potent, delicious to his palate. Master cannot feel these things for himself. His greatness surpasses these crude emotions, but he can feel its sharp bite when your kind bled and died in his domain. But you grow stale. Your kind have become too cocky. You no longer fear the darkness of this realm. It has become routine.
I tried to comprehend what the desecrator was saying to me. It is true that this war had become a business, just like every other war in human history. We had trained and conditioned our soldiers to suppress their emotions or risk going insane from the horrors they faced. We had gained new insight in technology and arcane powers due to reverse engineering the portal. After 50 years under constant attack, always pushing the enemy back, we had gotten used to how things were. Situation normal, all fucked up.
You think by your own strength, you hold the master at bay. You are mistaken. He allows you to survive. He allows your world to remain untouched, but you disrespect his awesome terror. Your meager offering do not appease him anymore. You must be severely punished and be witness to his great power.
Decimation? I croaked harshly. The word flooded my mind, forcing me to speak it. The creature wanted me to say the name of the punishment it would be handing down. Decimation! I repeated again. I knew decimation to be a form of punishment used by the Romans in ancient times. 10 men would have to draw straws, with the shortest straw losing. 9 of the men were forced to beat the 10th man to death. And some accounts even say they were forced to crucify their fellow unlucky soldier. It was a task performed to punish unruly or lazy soldiers, making them fear their commander's wrath and conditioning them to follow any order given to them. I tried to swallow, but I felt bile rising in my throat. I was afraid the vomit would choke me to death while I was frozen this way.
But the master has shown favor on you, Captain,
the desecrator said. He grabbed the collar of my fatigues and ripped them off in a clean stroke. I felt the cold air hit my bare skin, and I was disgusted by thinking of what this monster had planned for me.
He has noticed your transgressions. You play with powers beyond your station,
the monster said, while running his fingers down my chest, tracing the outlines of the fresh tattoos I had all over my body.
You tried to use the powers of the old ones to fight back. It is a stolen power,
the desecrator said to my face as his horrid breath almost made me vomit again. He stabbed his finger into my skin, and my dark tattoos began to burn me as they started to glow bright white. I screamed as my skin smoked and sizzled. The tattoos were an intricate web, crafted by the scientists in charge of occult studies. The designs spiraled all over my body, forming forbidden symbols in an ancient language. Now, every inch of the ink burned with a white fury. I was one of 7 officers who were voluntold to be test subjects for this new project. We would be bonded with the dark powers of this hell world. Researchers had made breakthroughs by studying the symbols and writings found in this hell. They said they could twist the evil power to be used as a weapon. I was one of the 3 that survived the experiment in the end. The other 4 went mad. They either killed themselves or tried to kill others. My friend Lieutenant Patrick had been found dead in his holding cell. He had eaten his own fingers and part of his stomach before dying of blood loss. The trick for me was to not look at the tattooed symbols inked all over my body. I requested to be blindfolded and restrained for days after the procedure. I made sure to always have my skin covered. Only my face was free from the scarred, tainted flesh. But the experiment had worked. At the moment of my death, I would recite an unholy prayer in a language taught to me. My body would burn. It would burn so bad, and I would teleport to appear half crazed and naked on the other side of the end of the portal. I would be back on Earth. I would have been teleported across the gap through dimensions. It was like having my very own ejection seat, like fighter pilots had. I had used it on 2 occasions in the last 5 years. Always when on the brink of death. I would only use it when the deadies were at my throat, when all was lost. Usually I was the last one survived, but sometimes I left behind fellow soldiers that couldn't be saved. But it was for the greater good. Humanity needed men that went out there without fear. Men who were uncorruptible by the realm's maddening effects. It needed leaders that could bravely lead men into battle with unimaginable horrors. I had to lead from the front to show bravery. None of my men knew about my little teleportation trick, my get-out-of-hell-free card. I had been with my current group of soldiers for the last 2.5 years. I had led them bravely and safely against countless nightmares. I made sure to minimize casualties while still accomplishing the mission. I kept them safe. Until now, that is.
At first, my master was angry with your trick. Angry that you stole part of his power to flee the battlefield, denying him his delicious agony of your dying. But I intervened for you. I saw you for what you were. Not quite a wolf in sheep's clothing, but a coward wearing a warrior's face. That's how we are brothers. You lead the humans to the chopping block, and I lead the executioners to their prey. You do it again and again. I do the same. So keep bringing your kind to die for my master's pleasure. Your larger world will be spared as long as you remain. Interesting. Keep my master from growing tired of your continued existence.
The thing stepped back and raised its black sword over its head again. My tattoos began to sting and burn with a new raw energy.
But you humans must be punished for trying to cheat my master. A grievance that only the payment of blood will suffice. Much, much blood. My master is a jealous god, and is angered when his flesh is stolen from him.
I knew what was coming now. I wouldn't be able to recite the cursed words of teleportation in time. My mouth was frozen anyways, making me unable to pronounce the proper syllables. I would be killed for good this time, and to die with my men at least. I thought the finality would give me peace. I had always imagined I would be stoic and calm when the time came. But I was terrified. My heart jumped in my chest like a rat desperately trying to escape a sinking ship or a burning house. I didn't want to die. I would do anything to survive.
Ah, yes. The fear. I see this too in you, Brother Captain. I intervene on your behalf because of this fact. Like I have fealty to my master, you are a singular loyalty above all else. You worship your own survival, making you the perfect toy to be played with. A man only interested in his own survival over any government or god. You will serve both masters regardless. So I part with you a gift. A completest spell your kind so feebly tried to replicate. A gift, so you may continue bringing my master more bodies to rip open and squeeze out such vivid pleasures.
Before I could make sense of the desecrator's words, the ebony blades streaked across my sight. A cold corruption ignited from my neck down, feeling to the rest of my body shut off like a switch. I could still see and think for the moment, being magically held in place. Then the blood began to clog my throat. I tried to cough, but failed as my lungs filled with the thick liquid and my vision faded. Before I was gone, before the loss of time, before I was reborn in pain, I noticed the expression on the face the creature had stolen. The corners on the mouth curled upwards. It was smiling as I died. I don't remember a lot of what happened next. I was briefed and debriefed constantly, until I was lucid enough to retain the information. I could only go by what surveillance footage I was shown after I died. The 3 military strongholds on the Hell side, Alamo, Thermo, and Vox, all fell within hours. The dark tide of mutated claws and teeth broke through every defense. Deadies in the thousands overflowed trenches, soaked up bullets, and suffocated any form of retreat or counterattack. With a new zeal and hatred, the enemy charged into gunfire and smashed themselves up against hardened barricades. Eventually, one of them would detonate themselves with explosives in a burst of gore. The gaps in the defenses created by the blast would quickly be clogged up and bursted through, with the tide of rancid bodies. Coordination in defense was broken and hectic. Different languages shouting different orders over each other on the radio. All military decorum, lost in the grip of hectic fighting. We had never seen anything like this on any scale. The Deadies advanced with unprecedented ferocity, but between the scattered communication, one report remained collaborative and clear. They all reported the tall, dark figure with the face of a man, striding calmly amongst the battlefield. When Alamo fell and the portal back to Earth was compromised, the brass gave the order to shoot any soldier of any nation caught retreating back through the portal to Earth. The enemy had never made it through to our home turf before, and we were all terrified at the prospect. I remember being made to watch the camera feed mounted in a large hangar, filming the Earthside portal. It was the portal I had just walked through with 25 of my men, only hours before losing my head. Now the loading bay was entwined with razor wire, a panicked and impromptu defense put in place as humanity quickly lost control of the battle. Hundreds of soldiers and Marines from all different nations all uniting in one common goal: to keep the Hell contained. keeping it from bursting forth into our world like rotting guts spilling from a swollen carcass. Trucks and forklifts were being moved to give firing squads a better line of sight on the portal. Heavy machine guns, shotguns, grenade launchers being handed out. The World War II era weapons discarded for more modern firepower. Contingency Plan John 1135 was enacted. The hangar and base was sealed shut. Bayonets were affixed to the end of barrels, and automated turrets installed along the walls were brought online. At least 150 to 200 heavily armed fighting men cramped shoulder to shoulder, filling the large hangar, all with weapons trained on the portal. From a camera high in the corner, I observed the nervous suspense of all the men. The room was almost motionless except for some nervous twitching here and there, the stomping of feet, or the rising smoke of one last cigarette before the chaos. Nothing but the sounds of gear and ammo being checked and rechecked and muttered prayers in the moments before the battle. I could almost feel the fear and desperation coming off the men. But there was something else, something new. Some men stood tall with determination and maybe even bravery. But I guess it's easy to stand in front of death when your escape routes were sealed off, and surrender was a ridiculous notion. I bet if the exit doors were still open, half the soldiers would tactically withdraw, just like I would have. The portal was an ugly, unnatural-looking thing. It looked like two burnt black trees rising out of the ground to arch towards each other at the top. They were made of a hard, shiny onyx material, with small twig-like spikes protruding out from all over them. The two pillars were 7 meters apart, rising 40 feet high, before curving inwards towards each other, barely touching the tips to form an arch. Hindsight being 2020, I realized they were made out of the same material as the headless monster. There was an indescribable wrongness about the twin pillars. It always gave off a low hum you could feel in your teeth. It also slightly distorted your vision when you stood too close to it. Many had reported developing a copper-like or sickly sweet taste in their mouth. Technicians and soldiers that only worked on the earth side of the gap had complained of depression and angry outbursts from being in too close proximity for too long. This unholy pillar had sprouted out of the ground at the end of the First World War, near the city of Verdun. It seemed to lay dormant during World War II, with only one squad of French resistance fighters disappearing, followed by the Allied rescue teams to find them. It wasn't until the 50s, during the Cold War, that we started to realize what it was. Let's just say whatever God was on the other side, it didn't appreciate all the spy games and political intrigue. The evil bastard wanted a wholesale slaughter with bodies piled in the field. So, more and more people started disappearing, abducted to be taken to the other side for its amusement. The alarm and flashing orange hazard lights mounted above the portal started going off, signaling an incoming teleportation pod was coming across the gap. The obnoxious whooping sound of the warning alarms echoed deafening across the chamber. The fluorescent lights flickered eerily as the power surge pulled heavily from the building's generators. We had found out through multiple trials that one solid sealed object could be transported safely across dimensions one at a time. So the engineering boys whipped up airtight transport pods to be loaded with men and equipment to teleport back and forth. Anything organic was microwaved and melded together if not protected inside the pods. Now, we were lucky to only receive sunburns on any uncovered skin. So whoever or whatever was coming from the other side must be stuffed in the transport pods we left behind. We all knew the enemy could duplicate strategies and action performed by humans, so a teleportation pod packed with deadies wasn't out of the picture. The alarm gave a final cautionary warning before the white flash of the teleport manifested its cargo between the two pillars. The security camera I was watching took a second to recalibrate and refocus, but when it did, there was an enormous blob of bloody flesh instead of the metal I expected. Before the tank-sized blob of gore sprang off the loading bay, I saw what it really was. it was dozens of deadies mutated and melted together. Steam billowed off its burnt exterior as multiple legs and hands propelled it into a rolling motion. Between the limbs, I could see mutated screaming faces. They hadn't used the pod. They had all gone through the teleport at the same time, melding all of their bodies together. Somehow I knew this wasn't random. I knew the Desecrator had somehow orchestrated this hideous outcome. I won't go into every gory detail, but you must already know by now that the oozing, pus-filled blob of hands and feet killed all the soldiers in the room. Once it hit the first line of men, it easily engulfed their bodies, grabbing and tearing at them, adding their body parts to the flesh pile. At one point, the blob had gotten itself cornered at the side of the hangar. The well-disciplined soldiers had repositioned out of harm's way to continue pelting it with machine gun firing grenades. The quivering mass shook, and it vibrated as it tried to press back against the hail of gunfire. Then the warning alarm went off again, and the orange hazard lights began blinking. Some new hell was being sent over from the other side. The men closest to the portal had to turn and face a new threat, dividing the amount of suppressive fire on the blob. Soon the flash signified an incoming teleport and it blinded the area. The blob pinned against the wall separated into 6 smaller-sized parts, each taken off in different directions. Half of the soldiers immediately opened fire on the steaming teleport pod that had suddenly appeared, while the other half tried to shoot down the faster, more agile blobs. 2 of the smaller gore pieces launched airborne to come down into the desperate defenders. They were tornadoes of spinning limbs and jagged broken bones, slicing and mutilating anyone near them. The biggest chunk of combined deadies had stayed in the corner when the other piece broke off of it. When they all separated from the host, the larger chunk rose up on spider-like elongated bone legs. The flesh at the top peeled away to expose gore-caked machine guns, surrounded by bulbous faces. Somehow the wicked weapons could still fire as it started mowing down defenders with a barrage of bullets. The transport pod's door fell open and a dozen heavily armed deadies came rushing out. The first in the pack held crude metal slabs as shields. Somehow all were dressed with metal helmets and tattered uniforms. The front line holding the shields only had shovel-shaped entrenching tools to bludgeon any humans that got close enough. The rest of the mutated soldiers had large firearms with abnormally large barrels, ejecting giant shells as they butchered their human enemies. It was nothing but slaughter then. The soldiers put up a valiant defense, but it's hard to fight off an enemy that has you surrounded and is already within melee range. After the last scream rang through the hangar, I was still forced to watch the recording. The camera showed the blood-drenched floor. The unrelenting deadies hammered and tore at the dead soldier. Just the sounds of bones breaking and flesh tearing could be heard. Finally, one last figure emerged from the dark opening of the teleport pod. It stood tall and proud after it emerged into the bigger chamber. Its bones were black, and the long sword was once again sticking through its chest. It angled its human head to look up at the camera high in the corner. It was staring back at me, like some sort of distorted mirror. It had taken my head, and now it would return to my world. Before the Desecrator left our world, the few remaining deadies fell lifeless to the ground, their purpose fulfilled. The creature twisted my head off of its lower jaw and tossed it, rolling down the loading ramp to bump up against a dismembered arm of a slain soldier. With his business done, the headless creature flashed out of existence, without any warning from the lights or alarms. This brought up a dreaded question. Did it even need the portal to travel to our world? I'm told hours later, response teams busted through the sealed doors and stormed the chamber. That's when they found me, all of me, I was naked, alive, and talking out of my head. My new body had changed. The tattoos that covered my body had been tweaked and redone. The spell had been optimized to work better. The spiderweb of designs ran up my neck, mouth, and cheeks now, only to stop at the point where the desecrator had ripped off my previous jawbone. A lot of things happened during the following months of my quarantine. I was in a fugue state, preaching non-stop about the glories of the dark god, and lacking the sense to go to the toilet before relieving myself. But a lot more things happened in the wider world because of the unholy incursion into our world. Most of the world's leaders experienced vivid hallucinations or night terrors at the instant the desecrator invaded. The dark god spoke to all of them through visions. He was not pleased with the entertainment and sacrifice we had previously been providing to him. The decimation also began. 1 out of 10, precisely 1 out of 10 people were beaten to death by their fellow co-workers. It affected everybody who knew of the existence of the portal and the endless battle. A poor 10th was selected to be brutally killed by 9 others privy to the secret. All the murdering men and women confessed to falling into a trance-like rage that only passed hours after their chosen victim was mutilated and torn apart. The memory of the murder was left as a vivid warning in all the unwilling participants' minds. Hurricanes, freak tidal waves, and earthquakes all rocked the globe. The desecrator showed us what could happen if the dark god touched our reality only for a few minutes. Behind closed doors, the leaders of Earth declared that enemy forces could never again pass into our realm. Recruitment and funding was quadrupled. A new plan was concocted. It proposed we declassify the secret war and let it out into the public, but only if it got much worse. PR teams were already working on posters and recruitment commercials to appeal to the youth of their respected nations. So that left only me. I thought for sure I would be killed or locked away forever, but the visions our leaders suffered expressly forbid this response. Seems the dark god had taken a liking to me. Long story a little shorter, the brass was okay with just giving me 3 meals a day and letting me rot away in a black site holding cell. But painful visions started plaguing my superiors until they allowed me to return to the battlefield. I was given a test run, allowed to go back through the portal with a group of new men. I had to be completely covered since a tattoo had spread to my face, and this was okay. I didn't want the men I led to know how far I had fallen. I knew what the desecrator and his master wanted. I was to lead by example, cause my men to have bravery and push forward, only to be eventually killed. False hope tastes better than no hope, you see. I kept the code name Charon for my dead unit. It seemed fitting as I led my kind into Hades to die. The deadies were far more vicious and numerous than before. Over 3,000 lives were lost taking back the Vox outpost. But if the deadies were getting tougher, then so were the soldiers sent to fight them. No longer skimping on the modern weaponry, our boys went over with the latest in killing machines. There was a new urgency in the hearts of men. Just what the dark god wanted. It took another 6 months of constant fighting to push the enemy back past Alamo again. I died 4 times during this period, only to manifest back in my holding cell, shitty as new. I can't say the same for the men I left on the battlefield. I refused to be a pawn for the desecrator in my government. I had to keep my men safe. I had to help humanity. Once we had taken back all we lost, I jumped the wire and marched out into the muddy wasteland. I began to sink into the slop, and I knew this would be a particularly painful death. But I didn't have to wait long. The desecrator emerged, wearing the rotting head of some poor kid. I told him that the scraps it gave us weren't enough. It was pushing too hard without any reward for our efforts in sight. We needed a light at the end of the tunnel, even if it was a fake light. I explained that humans might give up and try and surrender. We might try and reason with the entity. The desecrator was not pleased. Its master did not want servants. It wanted war. It wanted bloodshed. A deal was struck. Any mud my men stepped foot on would now slowly become solid. We could push the deadies back for miles and miles. We could breathe again. We could have hope. We could win. That little stunt took some suspicion off of me on where my allegiances fell. But it also meant I was heading over to fight more and fight longer. But in the end, we had forced the deadies back and gained 30 miles of breathing room. It's a false triumph. We were gaining ground just to have it taken back. This will cause the brass to panic and overreact. They'll probably start the draft again. Young boys and girls trained just enough to be put on the assembly line heading for the chopping block. They'll lie to you. They will say you are a new breed of soldier. They will say you are pioneers to other galaxies. And when you don't come back, they will tell your family you're deployed somewhere top secret. You will go through basic and be taught the bare minimum. You will know how to fire a rifle and dig a trench. Then you will be sent to the front. You might see me when you get there. You'll be told to do anything I say. You'll know me from my face obscured with the mask and the 1,000-yard stare. I'll be leading the charge. But I am not a hero. I am in hell. But I'll try to keep you alive as long as I can. But we will all die in the end. A sacrifice to appease the master. You'll be told your death will keep annihilation at bay for the moment. But in reality, you're just a small cog in the wheels of war. More meat for the grinder. Just so the people back home can continue to kill each other for other pointless reasons. Try not to think about your soul. Like, does it stay in that hell where you die? Or does it come back to our world? I don't know. Just be sure to get close to whoever you worship before taking the jaunt, just to be safe. My fear is the dark god will grow bored of the game. With a snap of its fingers, it could invade our space, causing madness and death on a catastrophic scale. So we must fight. We must appease him. We have no other choice. We have to try. Hey everybody, Kevin here from Nightmares Nightly. I hope you enjoyed that one. Let me know what you thought of it down below. I like the whole otherworldly fight, military thing. I haven't done anything like that in probably ever. This one was written by Cecily Stories, a really good author. I haven't had one of his stories on here in a while, and I really enjoy his work. Be sure to follow him. Check the links in the description down below. Check his Reddit page. And if you want to see me, so my goal here is I want to be full-time. I'd love to do this full-time. I would love to get a video out every single day. Right now I do at minimum every other day, and I try to get extra ones whenever I can. If you want to help me full-time, become a member, or better yet, go on the Patreon, because YouTube takes like 50% of the money, something crazy like that, for memberships. Patreon only takes like, 5 or 2%, something really low, might be 10. Patreon is the best way, but YouTube memberships, I know it's easier, and YouTube is just better, so it's just easier to use. Try to become a member or a patron. It would mean the world to me. All those things help me to take more time off of my day job and let me have more time in the recording studio. Also, my wife and I moved to a new house, so I'm basically like in a very small closet that with my computer desk crammed into it with a bunch of blankets around me. I would love to actually build a recording studio, and any YouTube memberships or Patreon money really helps with that. Because I think I want to do a DIY, actual make my own with my own hands sound booth, and I think I can get it done at around $1,500 to $2,000. That would be freaking awesome. Because right now I'm in this closet surrounded by blankets. And my computer is next to me and it's so loud. I have to like block a wall off my computer so that I don't hear all the fans. To have a studio would be freaking awesome. But as always, thanks for listening, everybody. Oh, also one quick thing. I just uncovered my computer, so the fan's so loud right now. But brother Jermaine Evans, he was on this video. He played the Desecrator. I really love working with him. I love having his voice on the channel. He's got his own YouTube channel. Check out his channel, Jermaine_TV. I'll have him in the description and hopefully like in the collaborator thing that YouTube does now, so you can check out his channel as well. I love working with him. I would love to have Jermaine on all the time. So please show him some love and support as well. Thanks, y'all.